Chapter 213. The Godfather's eyes turned cold. My target is Mikikito. That's too roundabout. Why not? Let's cast a long line to catch a big fish. Moreover, he was injured and his power had been damaged. He needed some time to recuperate. She looked around and smiled. Okay, I agree to work with you. The Godfather raised his teacup and smiled coldly. I wish us a happy cooperation. Su Yunqian also raised her teacup and clinked it with his. Happy cooperation. The preparations for the wedding had been completed. Xia Dong started to feel nervous when she remembered that they would be preparing for the wedding the next day. Bailey Han pulled her out of the door and said that he wanted to take her somewhere. He drove her to the cemetery on the outskirts of the city. After she got out of the car, she turned to look at him in confusion. He held her hand and smiled. Honey, let's go visit Mother. I hope she won't be angry and blame us for coming too late. So that's what happened. Xia Dong felt a lump in her throat. Her heart was filled with gratitude. He took out a bouquet of lilies from the back seat and held her hand as they walked to Xia Ling's tombstone. He placed the lilies in front of the tombstone, straightened his back and said sincerely, Mom, my name is Bailey Han. I married your daughter and will protect her from the wind and rain from now on. We will be holding our wedding tomorrow. Although you won't be able to be there, I hope you can see Xia's happy smile in heaven. Xia Dong burst into tears. She squatted in front of the tombstone and stroked the small photo. She sobbed and said, Mom, I'm very happy now. Please bless us so that we'll be safe and happy forever. Mom, if you're in heaven, you must bless Ahan so that he won't suffer anymore. You must bless Xiao Guai so that she can recover soon. After coming out of the cemetery and walking on the tree-lined path, Xia Dong suddenly stopped in her tracks. She stared at the man in front of her. She squeezed Bailey Han's hand excitedly. Bailey Han comfortingly patted the back of her hand and stood there with her, watching as Xia Jinqing slowly approached with a bouquet of chrysanthemums. Xia Jinqing also saw the two of them and his expression was awkward for a moment. However, he still took heavy steps and approached them under Xia Dong's cold gaze. Xia Dong looked at him coldly. Who told you that my mother's tombstone is here? Xia Jinqing's expression stiffened. I asked your uncle. My mother doesn't want to see you. She was like a kitten, her fur standing on end, ready to attack at any time. Xia, you're getting married tomorrow. No matter what, I'm your father. I want your mother to know about this as well. Xia Jinqing looked at her uneasily with a pitiful expression. You don't have to worry about these things. I'll tell Mom myself. Xia Dong clenched her hands into fists and stared at him. Go away. Don't appear in front of Mom. Xia, tears welled up in Xia Jinqing's eyes. At this moment, he no longer had the handsome demeanor of a young man, nor the elegance of a wealthy family. All he had was the sorrow of an old man with one foot in the grave. Honey, don't be so agitated. Be careful not to hurt the baby. Bailey Han put his arm around Xia Dong's shoulder and comforted her gently. Don't be angry. Let me talk to Mr. Xia for a while. You go back to the car first, okay? Xia Dong took a deep breath and tried to calm down. She didn't know why, but when she saw that man, she couldn't help but feel indignant and resentful. She knew that it wasn't worth it, but she couldn't help it. She kept repeating in her heart, it's not worth it, it's not worth it. She didn't look at Xia Jinqing anymore, only Bailey Han in her eyes. Okay, come back quickly. Only Bailey Han and Xia Jinqing were left on the boulevard. Although Xia Jinqing didn't have any self-respect in front of his daughter, in front of his son-in-law, he was imposing. He puffed out his chest and raised his head with a serious expression. Bailey Han, I know I'm not worthy of being a father and have no right to criticize Xia Xia, but I'm still her father. I'm handing her over to you, so I hope you can treat her well. Bailey Han didn't show the slightest hint of ridicule or disdain. He said seriously, you don't have to worry about that. I'll treat her well. No matter what, you're still Xia Xia's father and I'll respect you. However, for tomorrow's wedding, Xia Xia intends to let uncle hold her hand and walk her into the church. Xia Jinqing smiled bitterly. I understand. I don't have the face to attend the wedding. Mingyuan has always treated her like his own daughter. With him entrusting Xia Xia to you, I don't have any regrets. Bailey Han didn't want to say more. He nodded his head and said goodbye. He took a few steps forward and suddenly stopped. Without looking back, he asked calmly, if you could choose again, would you still abandon Xia Xia and her mother? Xia Jinqing's heart suddenly hurt. He didn't know how to answer. He had made this choice because he had no other choice, but the result wasn't what he had expected. But if he hadn't made this choice, the result would have been even worse. His silence made his attitude clear. Bailey Han's eyes turned cold. How dare he still not repent? If he wasn't Xia Xia's father, he really wanted to beat him up. Back in the car, Xia Xia sat in the front passenger seat. She lowered the glass and looked into the distance. She didn't come back to her senses until he opened the car door. She looked back at him and smiled faintly. What took you so long? He stroked her hair, feeling sorry for her. I wanted to beat him up, but I couldn't decide, so it took me some time. She smiled. Don't beat him up. Otherwise, you'll be struck by lightning. After all, he's an elder. She seemed to have thought of something, and the smile on her face froze. He asked with concern, what's wrong? She smiled stiffly. Do you think I'll be struck by lightning? My attitude towards him was so bad. I can't even be considered filial. No, God of Thunder will understand your difficulties. He pulled her into his arms and stroked her hair gently. We'll treat him better in the future. After all, he's an elder. She buried her head in his arms. After a long time, she said, okay. Before he came back, she thought a lot. She was now a mother of 3, so she shouldn't be angry anymore. Maybe she should try to let go of the hatred in her heart. Bailey's eldest son, Bailey Han, and Xia Dong's wedding was held in the church as scheduled. Accompanied by the beautiful wedding march, Xia Dong held Gao Mingyuan's arm and walked into the church leisurely. 2 cute little flower girls walked behind them, holding on to Xia Dong's wedding dress. Their delicate little faces had sweet smiles. Those with sharp eyes could recognize them at a glance. They were Bailey Han and Xia Dong's precious sons, Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao. Xia Dong was wearing a pure white wedding dress. Her black hair was tied up in a high bun, revealing her snow-white neck. Around her neck was a ruby necklace that shone with a mesmerizing luster. The design of her chest and abdomen was smooth, outlining her perfect curves. The layers of the skirt were dotted with broken diamonds like stars. In the morning light, she walked slowly and gracefully, like a fairy who was riding the waves. At this moment, she was the most perfect bride. She was so beautiful that people couldn't help but hold their breath. Everyone's eyes fell on her, but there was only one person in her eyes. The man standing at the end of the red carpet, waiting for her. Dressed in a white suit, Bailey Han stood tall and straight. There was an elegant and charming smile on his godlike handsome face. His obsidian-like eyes were filled with deep love as he watched her approach him. Gao Mingyuan solemnly handed Xia Dong's hand to Bailey Han. This was a lifetime of trust and a lifetime of responsibility. His eyes couldn't help but redden. Bailey Han also solemnly held Xia Dong's hand and solemnly promised, I will love Xia Dong for the rest of my life. I will never leave her. The priest began to preside over the wedding. Is there anyone here who can provide a valid reason to point out that the marriage of the two newlyweds is not legal? Suzaku couldn't help but glance at Mikakito beside her. He looked forward expressionlessly, as if he didn't hear the priest's words. She really didn't understand why he dragged his injured body to Xiaodong's wedding. Wasn't he looking for trouble? Su Yunqian gritted her teeth, made up her mind, and suddenly stood up. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Everyone's gazes turned to her. Other than the entire Bailey family, there were also people from the Su family, as well as all the influential people in City A. Everyone knew that Su Yunqian and Bailey Han once had a relationship. They all stared at her as if they were waiting to watch a good show. The expressions of the Bailey family members changed. Worried that she would say something inappropriate, Madame Su quickly tugged at her arm and said in a low voice, "Yunqian, what are you doing? Sit down quickly." The priest also looked at her and asked, "Madam, do you think the marriage of the two newlyweds is not legal?" Su Yunqian pulled her arm out of Mrs. Su's grip and smiled elegantly. "No, I agree with their marriage. However, the groom and I are good friends. I want to give him a song as a gift." Yunqian. Mrs. Su's expression darkened. She pulled her arm and tried to change her mind. However, she smiled and said, "Mommy, trust me. It's really just a gift." The priest nodded in agreement. The Bailey family couldn't stop her at all. She smiled elegantly. A blessing for the wedding for the groom and the bride. In the silent church, her beautiful voice sounded, but the lyrics made everyone's expression change drastically. "My invitation card is your wedding invitation card. Everything you wanted has now become my heartbreak. You're always too sober, and I can't get drunk. You even forced me to give you my blessings. Your wedding invitation card is my invitation card. You invited me to raise my glass, and I can only return the toast. Everyone here knows that we used to be so good. Now that my heart is broken, you still want me to smile." Su Yunqian's eyes were filled with tears at the end of the song. Her sorrowful expression attracted the sympathy of many people who didn't know the truth. Awesome novel, Shinwu 799. Chapter 214. There were already people whispering in the church. They seemed to be discussing the relationship between Bailey Han and Su Yunqian. Mikakito stared coldly at Su Yunqian. He would not let anyone who wanted to hurt Xia have an easy time. The old madam was so angry that her face turned pale. If it weren't for the occasion, she would have asked someone to chase Su Yunqian out. In her heart, Su Yunqian had always been smart and rational. She didn't expect her to do such a thing. Bailey Jincho's expression was also very ugly. Bailey Han held her hand quietly and cast a worried look at Bailey Han and Xiaodong. The two of them had now become the target of public criticism. Everyone's eyes were on them, waiting for them to respond. Xiaodong's hand trembled a little. Bailey Han sensed it. He held her hand gently and fixed his gloomy gaze on Su Yunqian. There was a faint smile on his lips, but there was no warmth. He said politely, "Thank you, Miss Su, for your gift. In return, I'll also give you a song." The whispers became louder. Everyone was curious about what song he would sing in return for Su Yunqian. Bailey Han held Xiaodong's hand tightly. He cleared his throat and said in a loud voice that everyone could hear, "The name of this song is very suitable for my current identity. It's called Brother Has a Wife." After saying this, he started singing the song with his sexy and magnetic voice. The lyrics also shocked everyone. "The beauty who loves me, listen to me. I already have a wife at home. Your love hurts her and hurts me. I advise you not to live the life of a mistress. Brother has a wife, don't seduce me. I can't betray her and live with you. Brother has a wife, please don't love me. I can't give you happiness or any promises. At the end of the song, everyone was stunned, especially Su Yunqian. She did not expect that Bailey Han would use such an extreme method to embarrass her. Clap, clap, clap. It was actually Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao clapping their hands. If conditions permitted, they wanted to shout, "Daddy is mighty." Bailey Jing held her forehead with one hand. God, her big brother, who had always paid attention to taste, actually sang such a popular song. His image as a male god had been completely destroyed. However, it was good that he was ruined, lest those indecent women outside covet him again. Mrs. Su was utterly humiliated. She glared at her daughter in grief and indignation. After the shock, Su Yunqian's face alternated between red and white. She looked at Bailey Han in grief and said word by word, "Bailey Han, Xia Dong, I wish you happiness." Tears flowed from her beautiful eyes. She smiled miserably. Ignoring everyone's shocked gazes, she covered her face and dashed out of the church. Mrs. Su hesitated for a moment. She was still worried about her daughter. She stood up from her seat and smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry, everyone. Father, please continue." She hurriedly chased after him. Originally, they thought that the farce was over and the priest was about to continue presiding over the wedding. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. The church door was pushed open. Everyone turned around curiously. They saw a tall and handsome man standing at the door. His entire body was exuding anger. He looked at Xia Dong from afar and could not suppress the anger in his voice. "Xia Dong, how could you marry someone else?" Boom! Everyone was shocked. Someone recognized the man and whispered, "It's Bailey Yun, the second young master of the Bailey family." What does the second young master mean? Could it be that he likes his sister-in-law? Wasn't there a rumor that said so in the past? The discussion became more and more intense. Bailey Yun turned a deaf ear to it. His handsome and tall figure stood at the door, exuding a vicious aura. "Ah Yun, why are you only back now? If you were any later, you wouldn't be able to make it in time for your brother and sister-in-law's wedding." The old madam stood up. She had a smile on her face, but her voice was extremely strict. She especially emphasized the words of brother and sister-in-law. Bailey Yun clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were like sharp knives, slicing Bailey Han and Xia Dong apart. The image of them standing together happily and sweetly was so glaring. He wanted to rush up and kick Bailey Han away from her and replace him as the groom. Sister-in-law, the woman he loved deeply, was about to become his sister-in-law. Blood surged in his chest and a metallic taste rose in his throat. His legs seemed to be filled with lead as he walked in with heavy steps from the door. His eyes were too frightening and cold. Xia Dong couldn't help but tremble. Bailey Han held her hand tightly. Bailey Han calmly met Bailey Yun's gaze and a smile appeared on his face. "Ah Yun, it's good that you're back." Bailey Yun stopped 2 meters away from them and stared at them coldly. "Second brother, come and sit down. I specially saved a seat for you." Bailey Jing saw that Bailey Yun was standing there in a daze. She quickly went up to him and hugged his arm, smiling as she dragged him to the side. Even if he rushed back, it wouldn't change anything. Bailey Yun was like a puppet, allowing her to push him to the seat. His deep eyes gradually lost their light and became filled with despair. Fortunately, the priest had seen many strange wedding scenes and quickly recovered from his shock. He coughed and continued to preside over the wedding. "Mr. Bailey Han, do you take Miss Xia Dong as your wife, take care of her, love her, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, love and respect each other, and never leave each other, and be together forever?" Bailey Han solemnly replied, "I do." "Miss Xia Dong, do you take Bailey Han, Do you take care of him, love him, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, love and respect each other, and never leave each other, and be together forever? She didn't hesitate. I do. Groom and bride, please exchange rings. Bailey Han took a ring from the Bible and carefully put it on Xia Dong's finger. She took the other ring and put it on his finger. With the legal rights granted by the law, I now declare that you are officially husband and wife. Now, the groom may kiss the bride. Bailey Han removed the veil on Xia Dong's face and lowered his head to kiss her lips. Their friends and relatives laughed and clapped. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao stood beside them, happily throwing flower petals into the air. Their laughter echoed in the empty church for a long time. Bai Tangshan glanced in Xia Dong's direction with a gloomy expression. Coincidentally, she also raised her head and looked in his direction. He saw surprise and guilt in her eyes. He forced himself to look away from her. He suddenly stood up and quietly left the church. He had witnessed their wedding and also witnessed Bailey Han's love for her. He didn't want to stay any longer. The vermilion bird was stunned for a moment before she quickly followed him. On the other side, Su Yunqian ran out of the church crying. She was caught by the reporters outside and they rushed over. She choked and said, I wish them all the best. Thank you, everyone. Please make way. She squeezed out of the reporters' encirclement. She lifted her dress and ran in her 10-centimeter high heels, not caring about her image at all. Mrs. Su chased after her and saw her running to the other side of the road from afar. Helpless, she was surrounded by reporters and could only watch her disappear on the street. Su Yunqian ran out of the street and didn't pay attention to her feet. She suddenly sprained her ankle. She lifted her skirt and bent down to check. Suddenly, a black Santana drove towards her. Screech! It braked and stopped beside her. Before she could react, two strong men jumped out of the car and approached her. What are you doing? She retreated in horror. A man quickly ran behind her, raised his palm, and heavily struck the back of her head. Her body went limp, and she immediately went limp in the man's arms. Quick, take her away. One of them jumped into the driver's seat and the other picked her up and threw her into the back seat of the car. They kidnapped her in broad daylight. After the wedding, dozens of luxury cars drove out of the parking lot outside the church and headed to the 5-star hotel where the wedding banquet was held. The hotel was built in the style of a European palace. In the magnificent hall, the luxurious crystal chandeliers shone brightly. People dressed to the nines sat in their seats, waiting for the bride and groom to appear. Soon, Xia Dong, who had changed into an evening gown, walked into the hall with Bailey Han's arm with an elegant smile on her face. As the MC, Xiao Tianqing teased with a smile, "Are you too late because the groom doesn't want to expose the bride's beauty in front of us?" Bailey Han answered seriously, "That's right. Xia Dong is my wife." The audience burst into laughter. They didn't expect the cold Bailey Han to have such an affectionate side. Bailey Yun stood alone on the balcony with his back to the lively hall. Looking at the beautiful sea view outside the hotel, he felt as if his heart had been dug out. His chest was empty and there were broken pearls in his eyes. His right hand couldn't help but grip the wine glass tightly. He raised his head and drank the wine in the glass in one gulp. He wanted to get drunk so that he could forget the pain. Unknowingly, he drank the whole bottle of wine, but he was still very sober. Hearing Bailey Han and Xia Dong's laughter, hearing his family's speeches, and hearing people's blessings, he couldn't help but fly into a rage and throw the empty bottle downstairs. Bang! A loud sound was heard, and the broken glass splashed everywhere. Screams came from downstairs. "Ah, my leg! Oh my God, who threw the wine bottle down? Duobao, are you okay? It hurts, you're bleeding." Don't be afraid, I'll call an ambulance right away. No need to call an ambulance, Bailey Yun was shocked. Bleeding. Call an ambulance. So serious. He didn't mean to hurt others, but he was depressed and wanted to vent. When he heard that someone was injured, he didn't care about anything else and ran downstairs. Bai Liyun's gaze hurriedly swept over, only to see a young woman sitting on the sofa in the hotel lobby. She was bending over, using a handkerchief to cover her right calf. Blood had already soaked through the handkerchief, and the dazzling blood color made him dizzy. Attention, Hongcha 866. Chapter 215. He rushed to her. Miss, how's your leg? Li Duobao raised her head and saw a handsome face. She was stunned for a moment before she grinned. So it's you. Bailey Yun frowned. Now is not the time to strike up a conversation. Let me ask you, is your leg okay? It's okay, the wound isn't very deep. My friend has already asked the hotel staff to help me get the first aid kit. Her delicate brows furrowed. I'm not striking up a conversation. My name is Li Duobao, and I'm a flight attendant at South Central Airlines. A few months ago, you gave me a bracelet, and I wanted to return it to you. I've been looking for you for a long time. Do you remember? Bailey Yun heaved a sigh of relief. If he had made an unintentional mistake and caused her to cripple her leg, it would have been troublesome. Fortunately, the wound wasn't deep. He looked at her seriously. Round cheeks, a pair of crystal-like bright eyes, a delicate little nose, and pink lips. She couldn't be considered a stunning beauty, but she had a lively youthful beauty. He thought about it seriously again and suddenly remembered that when he was on the plane to America, there was a flight attendant who comforted him, so he casually gave the bracelet to her. He sat beside her and said lightly, "Since I gave it to you, it's yours. You don't have to return it to me. But I can't accept such a precious gift." She puffed up her cheeks and said seriously, "Moreover, that's a gift you intended to give to your beloved. All the more I can't accept it." His beloved. These words were like a sharp sword, ruthlessly stabbing into his chest. He grinned self-deprecatingly. I don't need it anymore. I originally intended to give it to her when I confessed, but she rejected me. Now, she's married to my brother. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Li Duobao apologized profusely. If she had known, she wouldn't have mentioned this matter. Looking at his gloomy face, she carefully reached out and poked his arm. I checked the passenger list and know that you're Bailey Yun. Can I call you by your name? He answered casually. Bailey Yun, when I was in university, I had a senior who I really liked. It wasn't easy for me to muster up the courage to confess to him. He agreed and I was so happy. But the next day, he suddenly told me that he had only made a bet with someone. He bet that I dared not confess to him. He also said that I had caused him to lose a meal. Li Duobao recounted everything in a gentle voice. Her tone was calm, without any pain or anger. Bailey Yun temporarily forgot his pain and looked up at her. What happened after that? Li Duobao touched his nose embarrassedly. Later, I was so sad that I almost jumped off the building. It was my good friend who stopped me. She said, Li Duobao, if you dare to jump from here, I'll jump down to settle the score with you. Bailey Yun was stunned. She laughed. Do you think that my friend is especially loyal? She's always like that. Every time I do something wrong, she'll hit my head and yell. It's so fun. That time, she pulled me down from the roof, hit my head and scolded me for a long time. Then, she started crying. Fool. His pitch-black eyes stared at her as he lightly spat out these two words. I said, you're a silly. He suddenly had an impulse to hit her head like her friend. That kind of rotten man isn't worth you jumping off a building for. If I were your friend, I'd hit your head and scold you to death too. Li Duobao touched his forehead with tears in his eyes. It hurts. You hit me harder than my friend. His mouth moved. He wanted to say something, but suddenly, a girl's anxious voice was heard. Duobao, Duobao, I asked someone to bring the medical kit. How are you? Li Duobao quickly said, Yu, run slower. Don't worry. My wound is fine. Bai Liyun raised his head and looked over. A girl with short hair, who looked very handsome, was dragging a hotel staff member and sprinting over. Huff, huff, I'm so tired. Quick, please help Duobao deal with his wound. Ren Yuyu bent down and held her knees as she panted. The staff was dragged all the way over by Ren Yuyu. He was so tired that he was panting. He wiped the sweat on his forehead and squatted in front of Li Duobao. He opened the medical kit and put on disposable medical gloves. Miss, I'm going to disinfect your wound. It'll hurt a little. Bear with it. Ren Yuyu took out a clean handkerchief from her bag and stuffed it into Li Duobao's mouth. Duobao, bear with it. Bai Liyun saw the 3 to 4 centimeters long wound and felt a little dizzy. He felt a little guilty. The staff put alcohol on Li Duobao's wound. She couldn't help but tremble. She was in so much pain that she was sweating. She bit the handkerchief tightly and didn't make a sound. The blood on the wound was cleaned and medicine was applied. Then, it was wrapped in gauze. Okay, Mississippi, remember, don't let the wound get wet. Okay, I got it. Thank you. Li Duobao smiled sweetly. Her face was still a little pale. You're welcome. A wine bottle suddenly fell from the hotel. It's our negligence. Please forgive us. The staff bowed apologetically. It's okay. I can't blame you. Li Duobao felt that she could only blame herself for being unlucky. She was just walking, but the fragments of the wine bottle splashed on her leg. The staff left. Ren Yuyu looked at Bai Liyun curiously. Duobao, who is he? Li Duobao smiled embarrassedly. I almost forgot to introduce you. Bai Liyun, this is my best friend, Ren Yuyu, that I mentioned to you just now. Yuyu, this is Bai Liyun. Bai Liyun. Ah, this name is so familiar. I must have heard it somewhere. Ren Yuyu frowned and patted her forehead. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. No, ahem. Li Duobao quickly poked her with her arm, indicating that she shouldn't say anything. Unexpectedly, she had already blurted out, You're that crazy rich playboy who gave the bracelet to Duobao? Neurotic. Playboy. Bai Liyun didn't expect Li Duobao to use so many adjectives to describe his actions. He stared at her with interest. She touched her small nose and smiled embarrassedly. Well, playboy. I didn't say that. My original words were, rich playboy. Ren Yuyu raised her eyebrows, obviously not used to Li Duobao's pitiful appearance in front of Bai Liyun. Bai Liyun, what a coincidence that you're in this hotel. Yuyu, Li Duobao quickly pulled Ren Yuyu's arm. Don't mention it. Bai Liyun said lightly, a friend's wedding. He looked down at Li Duobao's injured calf and continued, Actually, I'm here to turn myself in. I was the one who threw the wine bottle downstairs. I'm very sorry that you're injured. Ren Yuyu was furious when she heard that. Hey, how can you be like this? How can you throw such a dangerous thing around? I'm very sorry. If apologies are useful, then why do we still need the police in this world? Ren Yuyu was furious. Do you know that Duobao has to fly to New York tomorrow? How do you expect her to go to work in this state? It was the first time Bai Liyun was scolded like a grandson by a woman. His handsome face was already faintly suffused with a dark aura. His thin lips were tightly pursed, as if he was enduring it. Yu, don't say any more. Bailey Yun didn't do it on purpose. I'm really fine. Don't worry about me. Li Duobao jumped up from the sofa and limped to Rin Yuyu's side. She hugged her arm. Yu, I'll take leave tomorrow. Anyway, I haven't taken any annual leave yet. I'll take a break at home. Relax, don't be angry. Rin Yuyu slapped her forehead in annoyance. Forget it. Even you, the victim, don't care. Why should I care so much? Her beautiful eyes swept over Bailey Yun and she snorted. Bailey Yun, you're already an adult. You should act like an adult. Don't do such a childish thing in the future. Bai Lian gritted his teeth and swallowed the words she was about to scold him. Li Duobao smiled apologetically. Bailey Yun, if you're fine, can you wait for a while? My house is nearby. I'll go back and get the bracelet and return it to you. Bailey Yun's slender foxy eyes twitched slightly. I've said that there's no need. Just treat it as my apology for hurting your leg. How can that be? He raised his hand to stop her from continuing. He said lightly, I'm a little drunk. I'll go back first. He didn't return to the banquet on the second floor. Instead, he walked straight to the hotel entrance. Li Duobao limped and wanted to catch up with him, but Rin Yuyu stopped her. Duobao, forget it. Bailey Yun didn't even look back. He walked straight to the hotel entrance and said a few words to the bellboy before tipping him. Rin Yuyu helped Li Duobao to the hotel entrance and planned to call a taxi home. The bellboy bowed politely and said, Miss, a gentleman has already called a taxi for you. The two of them looked at each other and thought of Bailey Yun. Li Duobao smiled. Sorry to trouble you. You're welcome. Please come this way. The bellboy sent them to the taxi. Rin Yuyu brushed the stray hair in front of her forehead and frowned. Bailey Yun doesn't seem to be a bad person. Duobao, did I scold him too harshly just now? Li Duobao nodded fiercely. It was really a little harsh. His expression changed. I was really afraid that he would fly into a rage and fight with you. Rin Yuyu rolled her eyes. Do you think I'm afraid of him fighting with me? Even if he fights with me, I'm not afraid. Li Duobao's face darkened. Yuyu, I know you're a taekwondo expert, but don't fight with others so easily. What if you meet someone stronger and suffer a loss? Rin Yuyu patted her head. Stupid, do I look like a brainless person? I'm just saying. When have I really fought with others? Li Duobao touched her forehead pitifully. I'm stupid because of you, okay? Rin Yuyu laughed sinisterly. One day, when you're no longer so brainless, I won't hit you anymore. Li Duobao's eyes were filled with tears. She was very smart, okay? While the two of them were arguing, the taxi arrived at the destination very quickly. Li Duobao was helped out of the car by Rin Yuyu. She frowned and asked in distress, Yuyu, what about that bracelet? Rin Yuyu said indifferently, keep it. Anyway, Bailey Yun doesn't want it. But, I don't think it's a good idea. She had never received such a valuable gift from a strange man. Didn't you say that it was a gift he intended to give to someone after his confession? Since his confession failed, keeping it would be sad. Rin Yuyu raised her eyebrows and said, just treat it as a kind gesture to help him deal with an abandoned item. Don't think of it as a gift. What kind of logic is that? I've become a kind-hearted person, this is called good karma. If you hadn't comforted him on the plane, he might have thrown the bracelet into the trash can. Li Duobao frowned and thought for a long time. She gritted her teeth and said, okay, I'll keep it for him first. When he needs it, I'll return it to him. When Bai Lian returned to the old mansion, it was very quiet. His family members were still in the hotel and had not returned. Even the servants had been given a day off because of the master's happy occasion. In the entire mansion, only the old housekeeper was left, guarding the door loyally. The after effects of the red wine were strong. When he got out of the car, he was already staggering. Fortunately, the old butler supported him, so he didn't fall. "Second young master, please sit in the living room. I'll go to the kitchen and get you a bowl of hangover soup." The old butler expected that someone would get drunk at the banquet, so he made the hangover soup in advance. Bailey Yun lay on the sofa and waved his hand drunkenly. The old butler quickly took the hangover soup and fed it to him. "Second young master, let me help you upstairs to rest." Bailey Yun closed his eyes lazily and whispered, "No, I'll wait here for them to come back." In the end, he couldn't resist the drunkenness and fell into a deep sleep before his family came back. Although the old butler was old, he had been on the battlefield with the old master when he was young. He also had a foundation in martial arts. It wasn't difficult for him to carry Bailey Yun, who was more than 1.8 meters tall, upstairs. Old Madam and the others had been entertaining the guests. It wasn't until the banquet ended that they realized that Bailey Yun was missing. Bailey Jing called his phone, but it was turned off. Then she called the old house. After the butler picked up, he knew that he had returned home. It was already afternoon when the whole family returned to the old house. Bailey Han and Xia Dong were both tired after a day of hard work. Old Madam asked them to go back to their rooms to rest for a while. The 3 children were also coaxed to go back to their rooms to rest. The chef was also on vacation, so Bai Jinxiu had to cook dinner herself. She made fragrant porridge and a few home-cooked dishes. The old butler knocked on everyone's door one by one and invited everyone downstairs to eat. When he arrived at Bailey Yun's door, he knocked for a long time, but no one responded. The old butler guessed that he was drunk and sleeping too soundly. Although Bai Jinxiu didn't like Bailey Yun, she still gave him some face in front of her husband. She calmly instructed the butler to leave some food for Bailey Yun to eat when he woke up. Attention, Hongcha 866. Chapter 216. The family was eating dinner at the dining table when heavy footsteps sounded. Bailey Yun walked down the stairs in his pajamas with messy hair and sleepy eyes. He walked straight to the bathroom to wash his hands as if he didn't notice everyone's strange gazes. He sat at the dining table and leaned back lazily. "Butler, help me get a bowl of porridge." Bai Jinxiu's expression was ugly. She held it in for a long time but still couldn't hold it in. She said indifferently, "Ah Yun, wash up first before eating." Bailey Yun's long and narrow eyes were half closed as if he hadn't woken up yet. He yawned and said lazily, "But I'm hungry." Bai Jinxiu was furious. She slammed her chopsticks on the table. "Look at you. What are you doing?" "Sorry, I like it this way." Bailey Yun replied lazily. He didn't take her seriously at all. Bai Jinxiu was about to fly into a rage when Bailey Jing pulled her back and said gently, "Mommy, second brother is drunk. Don't be so calculative." Bailey Xiong frowned and said slowly, "Ah Yun just came back from America. Can't you be a little nicer?" Bai Jinxiu was furious. Young master didn't behave like a young master at all. He was like an uneducated person. She only reminded him a little. How did it become her fault? She was so angry that her hands were trembling. If Bailey Jing hadn't held her hand tightly and comforted her in a low voice, she would have quarreled with Bailey Xiong. "Mommy, don't be angry. I'll help you get the rice, okay?" Bai Jinxiu took a deep breath and suppressed her anger. She said stiffly, "Forget it. I'm full from anger. I'm not eating anymore." She moved her chair back and went downstairs with a cold face. Bailey Jing wanted to go upstairs to see her. Old Madam said indifferently, "Granddaughter-in-law, go up and see your mother-in-law. Xia Dong replied with an okay. She scooped a bowl of porridge and served the dishes that were left for Bailey Yun before going upstairs. After such a commotion, everyone's appetite was not very good. Only Bailey Yun ate with relish. The three little guys quickly finished their meal. Bailey Han also put down his chopsticks. The old lady said, "Ah Han, take the three little Bao Bei upstairs." After they left, only the old madam, Bailey Yun, Bailey Jing, and Bailey Xiong were left in the dining room. The old madam looked at Bailey Jing and said, "Xiao Jing, go upstairs and see your mommy." Yes. Only now did Bailey Jing realize that her grandmother had deliberately sent them away. She probably had something to say to her second brother. The dining room was very quiet. Bailey Yun put down his chopsticks, wiped his mouth, and said indifferently, "Grandma, if you have something to say, just say it." The old madam's expression changed, and she said sternly, "Bailey Yun, you made a scene at the church today and made everyone laugh at our Bailey family. Do you still have any respect for this family?" Bailey Yun curled his lips mockingly. "Aren't you the same? Don't you have any respect for me, an illegitimate child?" "You, what are you talking about?" The old madam was so angry that her chest was heaving violently. "Tell me, have we ever lacked your food and clothes all these years? What does Ah Han have that you don't have?" Bailey Yun sneered. "Big brother is the eldest grandson and has the right to inherit the family. He can get whatever he wants. How can I compare to him? Moreover, I don't care for those things. So what if you satisfy my material needs? You have never cared for me like a family member." Bailey Xiong's expression changed, and he scolded sternly, "Ah Yun, what nonsense are you talking about? Hurry up and apologize to your grandmother." The old madam was so angry that her whole body trembled. "Evil creature, haven't you done enough stupid things all these years? Which one of them didn't we clean up your mess behind your back?" Bailey Yun laughed mockingly. "That's only because you were afraid of losing face. You were afraid that I, an illegitimate child, would embarrass the entire family, so you had no choice but to help me deal with those troubles. If they really cared about him, they wouldn't have left him alone when he was sick when he was young. Even Daddy, the only one who loved him, had to put away his care for him because of the old madam and by Jinxiu's expressions. If they really cared about him, they wouldn't have sent him, who had just become an adult, to America and ignored him. If they really cared about him, they wouldn't have criticized and scolded him when he was depraved and addicted to drugs without a trace of comfort." The old madam was so angry that she was about to vomit blood. Bailey Xiong slammed his hand on the table. "Ah Yun, shut up. Is this how you treat your elders?" He originally wanted to let his son, who he doted on, say a few words to appease him so that this matter would be over. Who knew that he would go against the old madam so forcefully? It was simply outrageous. Bailey Yun lowered his eyes and laughed coldly. His laughter was filled with endless desolation. "If you don't love me, why did you give birth to me and raise me?" Bailey Xiong's body trembled. All the words of reproach were stuck in his throat, and he couldn't spit out a single word. The old madam's fingers trembled. Her lips moved, but she didn't say a word in the end. She paused for a moment before calming down. With a stern expression, she said, "From today onwards, Xia Dong is your sister-in-law. I don't care what thoughts you had in the past. From now on, you'd better put them away obediently." Bailey Yun's thin lips were tightly pursed. He didn't say a word. The strands of hair in front of his forehead covered his eyes and his cold gaze. The conversation ended on a sour note. Bailey Yun walked to the staircase on the second floor and happened to meet Xia Dong coming down from the third floor. Ever since they returned home, Xia Dong had been avoiding his gaze. She didn't dare to look into his eyes that were intertwined with anger and pain. Now that they had met on a narrow path, there was no way to avoid it. She squeezed out a smile. "You're back." Bailey Yun clenched his fists tightly. His voice was bone-chilling. "How could I not come back for your wedding with Big Brother?" She bit her lip and said softly, "I'm sorry." She was about to walk away. When she brushed past him, he suddenly grabbed her wrist. "You said that it's impossible between you and Bailey Han. Why did you marry him? Let go of me first." Xia Dong had already heard footsteps coming up the stairs. She struggled anxiously and said softly, "This isn't the place to talk. Let go of me first. Are you afraid that they'll see us like this?" "Ha ha ha," he laughed out loud, his laughter wild. She heard the footsteps become more hurried, but he didn't let go of her wrist. She was so anxious that her eyes were red. She said softly, "Fox, I beg you. Let go of me first, okay?" He stared coldly into her eyes. Her eyes gradually became misty. A figure appeared around the corner. He was 2 steps away from them. When he reached the last step, Bailey Yun let go of Xia Dong's wrist. "Ah Yun, what are you doing here?" Bailey Xiong stared at Bailey Yun and Xia Dong with an unfriendly expression. Xia Dong's eyes were filled with pleading. Bailey Yun said lightly, "What else can I do? Congratulate sister-in-law and big brother on their wedding." "Thank you." Xia Dong curled his lips and thanked him sincerely. He naturally understood what she was thanking him for. His gaze turned cold. He didn't look at her again and went upstairs. Seeing the suspicion in Bailey Xiong's eyes, Xia Dong smiled. "Daddy, Mommy's anger has subsided. Xiaojing is accompanying her now." Bailey Xiong nodded. "You've worked hard too. Go back to your room and rest." When she finally returned to her room, Xia Dong was both physically and mentally exhausted. She leaned her back against the door and sighed. She had hurt Fox's heart so badly this time. He would never forgive her. And Brother Shin. She was really happy to see him recover and that he was willing to attend the wedding. She hoped that he would forget about her soon and find his own happiness. The sound of water in the bathroom stopped. Bailey Han pushed the door open and walked out. When he saw Xia Dong leaning against the door in a daze, the corners of his lips curled up. He chuckled and said, "Honey, are you standing here to peek at me taking a shower?" "Ah." Xia Dong was shocked. "No, you, hurry up and put on your clothes." What a hateful man. Why did he come out naked? She hadn't seen wrongly. He was completely naked. Bailey Han coughed. "I was thirsty, so I came out to get some water." He thought that his wife wouldn't come back for a while, so he came out naked. His hair was wet, and the water droplets slowly slid down his muscular chest, over his curvy waist, and then down his straight and slender legs. Although it was only a few glances, Xia Dong's cheeks were already red. Her heart couldn't help but pound. She suddenly closed her eyes and said anxiously, "Hurry up and put on your clothes." Seeing her shy reaction, Bailey Han's awkward mood was immediately relieved. He took a step forward and placed his hands behind her back. He leaned forward and almost stuck to her body. His tone was aggrieved. "Wifey, I've been taken advantage of by you." She closed her eyes tightly and covered her chest helplessly. I didn't see anything. I really didn't see anything. What a cute little woman." He chuckled. It was really fun to tease her. He pressed himself against her body and wrapped his arms around her waist. The water droplets on his body immediately spread to her body. She couldn't help but shiver. She blushed even harder. His eyes were full of smiles. He kissed her cheek and then kissed all the way to her ear. He whispered suggestively, "You really didn't see anything. We've been on the same bed for so long." You didn't see anything clearly. No, no, I really didn't. She closed her eyes and shook her head frantically. She really didn't see the black and red thing between his legs. Then I'm such a failure. I'll let you see it clearly tonight. His tone was serious, as if he was talking about the weather. Sob, sob, let me go. I'm so tired today. Tears streamed down her face. He blocked her lips and kissed her gently. When she was panting and he was about to have a reaction, he released her lips and said hoarsely, I know you're tired, so I'll let you go tonight. He suddenly bent down and picked her up. She was shocked and opened her eyes abruptly. She grabbed his arm hard. Didn't you say you'll let me go? Why didn't you keep your word? Sob, sob. His good-looking eyebrows raised slightly and he smiled teasingly. Wifey, you've misunderstood. I'm going to serve you as you take a bath. She was finally able to put down her worried heart. He carried her into the bathroom and placed her in the bathtub. The warm water flowed down slowly. His slender fingers landed on the zipper on the back of her dress. He slowly pulled it and the perfect curve of her back gradually came into view. His eyes darkened and his hands slowly moved forward. She quickly pressed his hands down. Hubby, I can take it off myself. You can go out first. Wifey, tonight is our wedding night. I'll serve you. This sentence sounded extremely ambiguous, and her face became even hotter. He stubbornly helped her take off her clothes. She had no choice but to cooperate and withdraw her arms from under the dress. His fingers moved gently on the back of her bra and the button came undone. She shyly arched her body forward and covered her chest with her hands. Bailey Hahn's fingers slowly slid along the curve of her back and extended to the front. He slowly opened his hand and covered her hands. His voice was bewitching. Xia Xia, let me see. No. Xia Dong blushed and shook her head, her shoulders trembling. She didn't dare to raise her head, afraid that she would meet his burning eyes. He didn't insist and retracted his hand. At this moment, the hot water had already covered her legs and was slowly spreading to her waist. He took a clean towel and after wetting it, he gently wiped her back. He knew that she was tired and deliberately made his movements gentle, afraid that he would hurt her. After he finished wiping her back, he even pinched her shoulders and massaged her for 15 minutes. She kept her eyes closed and felt the numbing sensation of the towel wiping her body. Her white jade-like toes curled nervously. When he massaged her, it was very comfortable and she couldn't help but relax her body. However, she didn't let down her guard and covered her hands tightly. The towel had already been moved from her back to her front. His voice was hoarse. Let go of your hands. I'll wash it myself. She hugged her hands even tighter. Be good. Her hands couldn't block the charming scenery at all. Her half-covered appearance made her even more seductive. His mouth was dry and his heart was burning with fire, but he could only try to suppress it. She still wanted to resist, but he didn't give her a chance. He covered the back of her hands with his hands again and rubbed them hard. She couldn't help but moan. Her delicate cheeks were so red that they were about to bleed. His voice was even more hoarse. If you don't listen to me, I'll punish you. He rubbed them again with bad intentions, causing waves of numbness. She couldn't hold it in anymore and her shoulders twitched slightly. She couldn't help but loosen the strength of her hands. As a result, he had his hands all over her, splashing water everywhere. Although he had kept his promise and let her go at the last moment, she was still exhausted. She would never dare to take a bath with him again. That was simply torture without any light of day. He carried her back to the bed. She turned over and immediately fell asleep in his arms. He planted a tender kiss on her forehead and his handsome face looked even more charming with a smile. Now, whether it was legally or formally, she was his wife. Beauty novel, Shinwoo 799. Chapter 217. On Bailey Han and Xia Dong's wedding night, some people were happy while others were sad. Bai Lian changed into a sexy tight-fitting clothes, drove his flashy Lamborghini, and rushed into the nightclub, drunk and dreaming. On the huge stage, a group of scantily clad beauties were performing an erotic dance, but he turned a blind eye to it and poured hard liquor into his mouth like it didn't cost money. Handsome, it's boring to be alone. I'll accompany you. A beauty wearing a low-cut, revealing short skirt rubbed against him. He squinted his eyes and smiled. He pulled the beauty onto his lap and ambiguously moved his lips to her ear. Okay. The beauty stretched out her hands and wrapped them around his neck. Her pink peaks skillfully rubbed against his chest. Her voice was soft and seductive. Handsome, let's go to the hotel. He smiled wickedly and suddenly picked her up. He strode out and threw her into the back seat of the car before getting in himself. It's boring to go to the hotel. Why don't we do it here? Ever since he fell in love with Xia Dong, he hadn't messed around with a woman for a long time. Since she didn't want him, why should he keep his virginity for her? Okay, I've never tried that kind of thing in such an expensive car. The woman was like a snake as she climbed up his body. Her hands moved nimbly on his body. She stuck out her tongue and slowly licked his collarbone. When her head leaned against his abdomen, he suddenly grabbed her hair. Ouch! Ouch! The woman cried out in pain. He suddenly pushed her away and pulled up his pants. He coldly said, "Get lost." The woman angrily climbed up. Are you crazy? You're crazy. Get lost right now. Bailey Yun opened the car door, grabbed her arm and threw her out. The woman was furious. She thought she had hooked a rich husband, but she didn't expect to meet a crazy person. He clearly had a reaction, but he suddenly asked her to stop. F***ck. She cursed at the Lamborghini for a long time. In the end, she still couldn't vent her anger. She picked up an empty can from the roadside and threw it at the car. The windows were tightly shut, and the soundproofing effect was very good. Bailey Yun leaned against the seat irritably and did not notice her little vengeful action at all. F***ck, he must be crazy. Why was his mind filled with that damned woman's face at this crucial moment? He had no way of mistaking that vulgar woman for her. He angrily and violently slammed his fist on the seat. Under the cold moonlight, two figures, one in front and one behind, stood on the roof of the building. The night wind blew, and the long hair of the figure behind him fluttered in the wind. She didn't care at all, and her eyes coldly stared ahead. Gotcha, the sound of opening the can of beer exploded. Suzaku took a few quick steps. She was already standing in front of Mikakito and said coldly, "You're injured. You can't drink. Get out of my way." Mikakito's handsome face was expressionless. She sneered. "Mikakito, don't forget what you promised me. You have to recuperate for 3 days. Don't do anything stupid." He said in a low voice, "Your condition doesn't include not being able to drink. You're being shameless. Are you still a man?" Suzaku was furious. Who did she offend? Why was a killer following a man around every day like a nanny? She was worried that he would lose his rationality and do something that would hurt her. His eyes narrowed, and they pierced into her skin like needles. He suddenly stretched out his long arm and held her slender waist. "Why don't you try it yourself and see if I'm a man? Let go. Don't force me to make a move." She grabbed his wrist. If it weren't for the fact that he was injured, she would have thrown him over her shoulder and thrown him out. He snorted coldly and threw away the can in his left hand. His left hand reached for her waist again. Aren't you going to make a move? What are you waiting for? She wanted to curse, but her cold face twitched. What is this? Are you trying to force me to make a move? I won't let you get away with it. The vermilion bird coldly snorted, and her figure suddenly spun rapidly like a spinning top. Seeing that she was about to escape from his encirclement, Beitangshan's eyes flashed, and his long legs swept out, aiming for her waist. If it was in the past, the vermilion bird would definitely turn around and retreat, and then sweep back. However, her target was the injured Beitangshan, and she knew that he was deliberately angering her in order to force her to exchange blows with him. Thus, she wouldn't foolishly attack. She retreated step by step while he closed in on her. Unknowingly, they had already exchanged a few moves. She frowned. If this continued, there would be no end to it. The vermilion bird suddenly stopped moving as Beitangshan ruthlessly punched towards her chest. He didn't expect that she would suddenly stop moving and wanted to withdraw his move, but it was already too late. He abruptly shifted his fist to the side by 3 centimeters, and his fist brushed past her left shoulder as it slid past. Even so, he still hit her left shoulder with 70% of his strength. She could almost hear the sound of her arm breaking. Her face was cold as she said indifferently, "Go back. Don't let Uncle Hanzo worry." Suzaku turned around to leave. Her left arm shook uncontrollably. It was really broken. Mikakito's eyes narrowed. He strode forward and grabbed her right arm. "Don't move. Your arm is broken." She turned back to look at him. Her eyes were calm as if she didn't feel pain at all. "You're fine even though you're injured so badly." "My small injury is nothing." He choked on her words. After 2 seconds of silence, he said coldly, "You're a woman. How can you compare yourself to me? I'm an assassin. Assassins don't discriminate between men and women." She suddenly curved her lips into a smile. Under the moonlight, there was a faint smile on her cold face. Her sexy red lips were as mesmerizing as a rose. Even her voice sounded warm. "Mikakito, don't be so willful. Go back." He was stunned. His face darkened. He gritted his teeth and said, "Are you lecturing me?" She smiled and raised her eyebrows. "You're my boss. How would I dare to lecture you? I'm just saying what I think of you." She was actually so blunt. The veins on Mikakito's forehead throbbed. He almost couldn't hold back his anger. But when he saw her left arm hanging by her side, he suppressed the anger in his heart. He said coldly, "Go back." She raised her eyebrows and followed behind him without a word. When they returned to the villa, the first thing Mikakito did was to call Miyamoto Hanzo over to treat her broken left arm. During this time, he received a call from Japan. He went out to answer the call. After the call ended, he was about to push the door open when he heard Miyamoto Hanzo's voice. "Xiaokei, what happened to your injury? Don't tell me it was Ashin who hit you." "Ah, Ashin really did such a thing. I did it myself." Suzaku's voice was cold. "But there are red and swollen marks on your arm. These are clearly marks left by a fist." Miyamoto Hanzo's voice was filled with dissatisfaction. Was Xiaokei questioning his professionalism? "I stood still on purpose, so I got injured." Her voice was still indifferent. "Why? Do you have masochistic tendencies?" Suzaku's mouth twitched. "I don't have that kind of hobby." She couldn't say it out loud. She just didn't want to see him continue to go crazy. Perhaps only when she gave up resisting could he regain his rationality. "Then why is it? Could it be that you can't bear to see him get injured?" Miyamoto Hanzo was really gossipy. Suzaku's eyes flashed. She stared coldly at Miyamoto Hanzo. "Uncle Hanzo, you seem to be talking too much." Hee hee, so I guessed it right. Xiao Kei, don't be shy. Uncle can understand your feelings of not wanting your lover to get hurt. Think about how I used to. With great difficulty, Hanzo Miyamoto finally found a topic that he could talk about. He kept talking, and the blue veins on Vermilion Bird's forehead popped out. This old man, how could he be so self-righteous? How could she bear to see Mikakito get hurt? She was just keeping her promise. That's right, that's it. Beitang Shen, who was standing at the door and inadvertently overheard their conversation, also had the veins on his forehead throbbing. Of course, he didn't believe Hanzo Miyamoto's words, but he was unhappy that Hanzo Miyamoto was making fun of him. Mikakito purposely made a big noise when she opened the door to interrupt Miyamoto Hanzo's endless recollection. Uncle Hanzo, how's Suzaku's injury? Ha! Oh, her injury. It's not a problem. She'll recover in 2 weeks. Uncle Hanzo slapped his forehead. He had almost forgotten his main purpose of coming here. He started nagging again. I've put a splint on your left arm. You can't use force, and you can't fight with others. I know. I'm not a 3-year-old kid. Suzaku was helpless. Uncle Hanzo chuckled. Who knows if you're as stubborn as Shin? That's why I have to explain it clearly. Mikakito's face darkened. Did he have to drag him into every conversation? Where was his dignity as the boss? Miyamoto Hanzo said with a smile, Shin, since you're the one who caused Xiao Kei's injury, you have to take responsibility and take good care of her. Do you understand? I'll leave first. You guys can have a chat. The little old man quickly packed up his things and happily closed the door. When the two of them couldn't see him, he stroked his chin proudly and muttered, I'm so smart. Brother Tsuruchi, if Shin's marriage is settled, you have to thank me properly. Mikakito glanced at Suzaku's tightly bound left arm. His expression was a little stiff, and his tone was a little stiff. Stay in the villa tonight. If you need anything, ask Lu Xing to help you. He suddenly thought of something, and his expression became even stiffer. He coughed and said, it's better to call a maid. If you want to bathe, she can help you. Suzaku's mouth twitched, and she said lightly, I only have a fracture, not a disability. Moreover, my left arm is injured. My right arm is fine. I can do these things myself. She took her coat from the chair and casually draped it over her shoulders. I'm going back to my own home. I'll ask Lu Xing to drive me. You should rest early. Mikakito's brows furrowed, and there was a chill in his eyes. This woman, did she not understand what he was saying? As the hall master, I order you to stay here tonight. She was speechless. All right, you win. Childish man. Beauty novel, Shinwu 799. Chapter 218. Late at night. The Su family was in a mess. Su Yunqian hadn't been heard from since she ran out of the church. Mrs. Su called her, but her phone was turned off. Although she was a little worried, she didn't think much about it. She thought that Su Yunqian wanted to be alone, so she turned off her phone. But at midnight, Su Yunqian still hadn't come home. Mrs. Su was anxious. Su Yunqian used to call her family when she didn't come home at night. But today, there was no news from her all day. Her family was wondering if she had an accident. Her eldest brother, Su Jinhen, asked his friends to search for Su Yunqian's whereabouts in a city. Mrs. Su didn't care about anything else. She called Bailey Han and woke him up from his sleep. She told him that Su Yunqian was missing and asked him where he used to go with Su Yunqian so that they could search for her. Bailey Han frowned, thought for a while, and said a few names. Mrs. Su sobbed on the other side of the phone. "Ah Han, sorry to trouble you. I won't disturb your rest. Auntie, please tell me if there's news about Yunqian." After ending the phone call, Bailey Han walked into the bedroom from the balcony. He was a little worried. Where would Yunqian go? Was it because he didn't give her any face at the church, so she took things too hard and did something stupid? He frowned deeply and sat on the bed. He didn't feel sleepy for a long time. He glanced at Xia Dong, who was sleeping soundly. He gritted his teeth, got up and changed his clothes. He bent down and kissed Xia Dong on the cheek. He whispered, "Honey, I'm going out. I'll be back soon." There was little traffic on the road at midnight. Occasionally, he would meet one or two drunkards or homeless people. Bailey Han drove to many places, almost all the places where they used to date, but still couldn't find her. The uneasiness in his heart grew stronger and stronger. He also felt guilty. If something really happened to her, it must have something to do with him. Bailey Han glanced at the time. It was already 5:00 in the morning. He turned the car around and set off on his way back. He had to get back before Xia Dong woke up. Bailey Han had been running around for half the night, and his coat was cold. After he entered the room, he immediately changed his clothes and hung them on the hanger. He walked softly to the bed. Fortunately, Xia Dong had not woken up yet. He quietly laid down beside her and covered himself with the blanket to warm himself up. Then, he reached out and gently hugged her waist. In her sleep, Xia Dong naturally leaned against his chest and even rubbed against it comfortably. A smile appeared in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. The worry in his heart was still there. After running around for half the night, he was also tired. With the warm and fragrant jade in his arms, he quickly fell asleep. It wasn't until a ray of dazzling sunlight shone through the window that he slowly opened his eyes. His arms were empty, and the spot beside him was cold. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He got out of bed, opened the glass door, and stood on the balcony to look down at the garden. He happened to see Xia Dong pushing old Master Yi in the garden to get some fresh air. Xia Dong pushed old Master Yi under the grape trellis and sat beside him. She opened the day's newspaper and softly read it for him. Although he probably couldn't understand it, she still read it very seriously. She had a warm smile on her face, and from time to time, she would give her thoughts after reading it. When Bailey Han walked to their side, he saw this scene. His heart softened. He gently held her shoulder from behind and said softly, "Honey, why are you up so early?" She turned to look at him with a smile on her face. "I just woke up earlier than you this morning." Because of her pregnancy, she was very sleepy. In the past, she used to wake up late every day. He smiled and rubbed his head against her hair. She patted the back of his hand. "Hubby, did you go out last night?" His eyes moved. "Why do you say that?" She smiled. "I woke up in the middle of the night and realized that you were gone. I waited for more than an hour, but you didn't come back. Unknowingly, I fell asleep again." He hugged her and asked sympathetically, "Did you cry this time?" She looked down shyly. "No, I knew that you wouldn't leave me behind." However, she was still very worried. She was worried that something might have happened to him. He couldn't help but kiss her face and said softly, "Honey, before I explain, you have to believe me. I don't have any other thoughts." "Okay, I believe you. You must have a reason." Her trust made him feel touched and warm. He explained calmly, "Last night, Mrs. Su called me and said that Su Yunqian was missing. I was worried that my actions yesterday had hurt her, so I drove out to look for her." Her beautiful brows furrowed slightly. "Su Yunqian is missing. Have you found her?" He said in a low voice, "Not yet." She tried to comfort him. "Hubby, don't worry. Maybe she just went to a friend's house or somewhere to relax. He looked into her eyes. You're not angry with me? She was amused. What's there to be angry about? Do I look like a narrow-minded person? She believed that he was feeling guilty and not because of anything else. His lips curved and his eyes were filled with love and adoration. He teased, of course not. My wife is so broad-minded that she can be a racetrack. She laughed. I've only heard of people with broad-mindedness, but I've never heard of people with broad-mindedness. I've heard of it now. You're the first person in history. If Grandpa wasn't by his side, he would definitely pull her into his arms and be intimate with her. According to the plan, they would rest at home today and fly to Greece the next day for their honeymoon. However, because Su Yunqian was missing and Mrs. Su called to ask old Madame Han for help, old Madame Han discussed with the couple and decided to postpone their honeymoon until they found Su Yunqian's whereabouts. Bailey Han secretly mobilized the dragon gang to help find Su Yunqian. In the afternoon, Mrs. Su suddenly came to visit. Her eyes were red and swollen like peaches. When she saw old Madame Han, her tears fell and her body trembled. She couldn't even walk steadily. Bai Jinxiu quickly supported her. Huilan, don't worry. Yunqian will be fine. Mrs. Su's tears fell even harder. Her lips trembled and she couldn't say a word for a long time. With Bai Jinxiu's help, she sat on the sofa and wiped her tears. With difficulty, she said, Auntie, Jinxiu, Yunqian has been kidnapped. Bailey Han and Xia Dong were also present. When they heard this, their hearts tightened. Old Madame Han and Bai Jinxiu were shocked. How did this happen? Did you call the police? Mrs. Su sobbed and said, the kidnapper said that we can't call the police. If we do, he will kill her immediately. He also sent us a CD. I'm here today for this CD. She took out a CD from her handbag. The old butler stepped forward and put the CD into the CD player. Soon, a picture appeared on the wall-mounted TV screen. It seemed to be an enclosed space with white walls on 3 sides. There was a chair in front of it. Su Yunqian's body was tied to the chair. Her hair was messy and her head was broken. Blood flowed from her forehead to her cheek, and there were clear fingerprints on the other side of her cheek. Just by looking at her appearance, it was obvious that she had been severely beaten by the kidnapper. Her eyes were filled with tears and her expression was full of fear. She held a piece of paper in her hand and read aloud in a trembling voice. Daddy, Mommy, I'm fine now. But if you don't do as the kidnapper said, I will be hurt soon. The kidnapper said that we can't call the police. If we do, he will kill me immediately. He also said that if you don't meet his conditions, he will. Tears rolled down her face. She looked up and begged, I beg you, let me go home. No matter how much money you want, my daddy will pay you. There was a clear click from the CD. Bailey Han could tell that it was the sound of a bullet being loaded. It should be the person who took the CD threatening Su Yunqian. Su Yunqian cried and shook her head. Don't shoot, don't shoot. I'll read it. He also said that if you don't meet his conditions, he will rape me. After reading this sentence, she was already sobbing. After almost a minute, she continued to read, the kidnapper's conditions are that Bailey Han and Xia Dong get a divorce within 3 days. Then, he will hold a press conference in front of all the media to announce their divorce. He will also let the media film the divorce certificate because he wants to verify its authenticity. Then, he will let Xia Dong come and take me home. The kidnapper said that he has liked Xia Dong for a long time. It's a pity that she married Bailey Han. After reading this paragraph, Su Yunqian's face was already covered in tears. She screamed in front of her, you lunatic, you like Xia Dong. Why are you targeting me? Why? Click. The entire image suddenly disappeared and Su Yunqian's crying stopped abruptly. Everyone was dumbfounded. The kidnapper didn't kidnap Su Yunqian for money, but to force Bailey Han and Xia Dong to get a divorce. The kidnapper also said that he had liked Xia Dong for a long time. What was this? Could it be that the kidnapper's ultimate goal was to get Xia Dong? Mrs. Su cried uncontrollably. What should I do? What should I do? My poor Yunqian. Bai Jinxiu had mixed feelings. She comforted her gently, Huilan, don't be so agitated. We'll find a way. Xia Dong didn't know how to describe her feelings at this moment. It was extremely complicated. How could there be such a kidnapper? When did she have such a crazy suitor? Speaking of which, was it her who caused Su Yunqian to fall into this situation? Xia Dong couldn't hold back the worry and anxiety in her heart. Her entire body was cold and her shoulders couldn't help but tremble. Bailey Han reached out his right hand and held her cold hand tightly. She only felt slightly relieved when she felt his burning warmth. Mrs. Su cried and said, what else can we do? We've already checked the source of the CD, but there are no clues. 3 days, how can we save Yunqian in just 3 days? A powerful novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 219. Bailey Han said in a low voice, play the CD again. Maybe we can find some clues from it. The CD was played again and again. Every time Mrs. Su heard Su Yunqian's cries, she would shed tears of sadness. Unfortunately, they couldn't find any clues from the CD. It was a completely enclosed space with snow-white walls. There were no landmarks, not even a window. Other than Su Yunqian's cries and the sound of bullets being loaded, they couldn't hear anything else. There was no way to identify their environment through the sounds. Everyone was silent. In the entire living room, only Su Yunqian's hysterical cries could be heard. You're crazy. You like Xia Dong. Why are you targeting me? Why? Her cries were like a sharp knife stabbing into Xia Dong's heart. Xia Dong even began to feel guilty, thinking that it was really because of her. Mrs. Su covered her mouth with a handkerchief and wailed. The old madam had a headache. She held her forehead with one hand and frowned. After a long silence, she said, I think we should ask the police to help secretly. They have so many experts in solving cases. Maybe they can dig out some useful information. Bai Jinxiu agreed. Huilan, the old madam is right. We should ask the police for help. Mrs. Su wiped her tears. What if the kidnapper finds out and wants to harm Yunqian? The old madam said, of course we have to find someone we can trust. Han, call the chief now and ask him for help. Bailey Han held Xia Dong's hand tightly and gave her a reassuring look. Then he walked to the landline and called the chief of the police station. He briefly explained the situation. The chief immediately said that he would immediately send someone he could trust to the old mansion to understand the situation. Half an hour later, 2 young policemen in civilian clothes and driving an off-road vehicle arrived at the old mansion. They took out their IDs and said that they were police officers from the Major Crimes Division. After some small talk, they got to the point. A policeman named Wang Kai took out a recording pen. Mrs. Su, please describe the situation before the crime in detail. With the police present, Mrs. Su finally controlled her emotions. She took a deep breath and said slowly, at that time, Yunqian and I were attending Han's wedding at the church. Yunqian left halfway because of something. I chased after her, but I was surrounded by reporters. When I got out of the encirclement, Yunqian was already gone. I called her, but her phone was turned off. I didn't pay much attention to it at that time. I guessed that she was just going somewhere to relax and would be back soon. But until midnight last night, she still hadn't come home. When I called her, her phone was still turned off. That's when I realized that something was wrong. Wang Kai asked, "How long has it been since you chased after her and found that she was gone?" Mrs. Su thought for a moment and said, "About half an hour." Wang Kai asked again, "Which direction did you see her leave in?" "The last time I saw her, she was walking toward the T-junction." Wang Kai quickly analyzed the situation in his mind. There was a crossroad outside the church, and the T-junction was the road opposite the church. There were new buildings on both sides of the road, and there were fewer people. Moreover, there were no surveillance cameras on that road. Su Yunqian was most likely kidnapped on that road. He turned his head and said a few words to his colleague. The criminal police officer named Yang Xiao immediately walked out of the living room and called the chief. He briefly explained Wang Kai's analysis of the situation and asked the chief to send someone to the T-junction to look for witnesses. Wang Kai asked Mrs. Su a few more questions about Su Yunqian's social life. He wanted to know if she had offended anyone or gotten into a dispute with anyone. The answer he got was of course negative. In front of everyone, Su Yunqian was an elegant and kind goddess. Mrs. Su didn't think that she would get into a dispute with anyone at all. "Let's take a look at the CD now." Wang Kai opened the CD. He frowned and carefully observed every detail. He listened carefully to every word Su Yunqian said. Yang Xiao was also taking notes. Just like Bailey Han, they didn't find anything iconic through the video. Wang Kai turned his gaze to Bailey Han and Xia Dong and said politely, "Mr. Bailey, Mrs. Bailey, I have a few words to say to you in private." Bailey Han led them to the study upstairs. Wang Kai said, "Based on the analysis of the content of the video, the kidnapper should be someone who knows Mr. Bailey and Mrs. Bailey. Please think carefully. Among the people you know, is there anyone suspicious? For example, Mrs. Bailey's admirer." Xia Dong had been thinking about this question for a long time. She pursed her lips and said, "No, I can't think of such a person. Can you tell me who your admirers are?" She glanced at Bailey Han awkwardly. Bailey Han nodded slightly and held her hand. She gritted her teeth and said, "There are only two admirers I know, Mika Keto and Bailey Yun." Mika Keto, the president of Boao Group. Xia Dong nodded. "I've always treated him as my big brother. I know him well. He wouldn't do such a thing." Wang Kai coughed. "Mrs. Bailey, we need to investigate whether Mika Keto is innocent before we can make a judgment. As for Bailey Yun, has he been acting strangely recently?" Bailey Han said in a low voice, "It can't be Yun. Yun was in the United States and just came back yesterday. Moreover, he walked into the church after Su Yunqian left." Wang Kai didn't comment and asked, "Mrs. Bailey, have you encountered anything strange, such as being followed?" Generally, perverted admirers like to follow the person they liked. Xia Dong thought carefully and shook her head. "No." Bailey Han frowned and said, "Actually, there's another possibility. That is, the kidnapper deliberately released a smoke bomb to frame my wife. He's not an admirer at all." Wang Kai nodded. "That's also possible. Mrs. Bailey, have you ever had a grudge with anyone?" "Yes, her name is Su Xingqian. She's my half-sister." Xia Dong felt that it was quite ironic. Strictly speaking, Su Yunqian also had a grudge with her. Wang Kai asked Bailey Han a few more questions and then ended the conversation. After going to the living room, he said goodbye. "Madam, Mrs. Su, we have a general understanding of the situation. We will start the investigation as soon as possible. We need to bring this CD back to the police station for technical analysis. If the kidnapper sends any new information or if you think of any clues, please contact us immediately. Madame Sue smiled politely. Okay, thank you. Butler, see the guests out. The police immediately launched a secret investigation and questioned Mika Keto and Bailey Yoon in detail. Both of them had witnesses who testified that they were not at the scene of the crime. The Sue family spent the day in panic. The next day, the police still didn't find any clues. Instead, something more serious happened. A video appeared on the internet. The content of the video was from the CD sent by the kidnapper yesterday. Although it was controlled in time to prevent the TV, newspapers, and other media from spreading it, it couldn't stop the rapid spread of the internet. In just one morning, hundreds of small websites reposted the video. The kidnapping of the goddess of a city became the hottest topic. Many people were talking about it. They all thought that it was Xia Dong's fault. They thought that she had provoked a perverted admirer, causing Su Yunqian to be kidnapped. Some netizens said that he had attended the wedding of Bailey Han and Xia Dong. When he saw Su Yunqian being humiliated and running out of the church, he suspected that she was kidnapped at that time. He put all the blame on Bailey Han and called him a heartless man who abandoned Su Yunqian. As if to prove his words, another netizen posted a photo of Su Yunqian running out of the church with her face covered. Most people began to support this argument. They thought that it was Bailey Han and Xia Dong's fault that Su Yunqian was kidnapped. They should divorce to save Su Yunqian. As time went by, the old house of Bailey was surrounded by people. The pressure of public opinion was getting stronger and stronger. Xia Dong stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and looked at the wall of people outside. She felt more and more uneasy. She had seen the heated discussion. If they really couldn't find any clues about the kidnapper, there was only one way left. Did she really want to divorce Bailey Han? Bailey Han pulled her away from the window and sat her on the sofa. He held her in his arms and said softly, "Honey, don't listen to their nonsense. It's not your fault. Honey, what if the police can't find any clues?" Bailey Han said in a low voice, "It won't happen. There must be a way." She stared at him uneasily. "What if there isn't a way? Are you going to divorce me?" "No." He blurted out almost without thinking, "The kidnapper's request is for us to divorce and for you to pick up Su Yunqian. Isn't this a disguised way of exchanging you for Su Yunqian? How could I do such a thing?" Xia Dong felt that his words were enough. Tears glistened in her eyes as she said, "But if I don't do it, he will humiliate Su Yunqian." He held her shoulders with both hands and stared at her with deep eyes. "If I exchange you for Su Yunqian, how will the kidnapper treat you?" "Silly, don't let your imagination run wild." "I will never do that." Bailey Han felt that this matter was very strange. It seemed that the kidnapper was deliberately targeting himself and Xia Dong. It was very likely that the kidnapper had a grudge against Xia Dong. He had asked the Dragon Gang to secretly monitor Su Xingchen before, but they didn't get any useful information. He also suspected his godfather, but his godfather seemed to have disappeared without a trace. The Dragon Gang went to his godfather's lair to check, but they didn't find any clues either. Soon, Beitangshan also found out about this matter. He quickly gathered the hackers and asked them to delete the video on the internet as quickly as possible. He also asked them to delete all the negative comments about Xia Dong. However, he still couldn't stop the people from talking. Come and see, Hongcha 866. Chapter 220. It was already the third day. A new video was released on the internet. It was still the same enclosed room with white walls. Su Yunqian was tied to a chair. This time, she looked even worse than the last time. Her white dress was stained with blood, her cheeks were red and swollen, and there was blood at the corner of her lips. She sobbed as she read the note written by the kidnappers. Daddy, Mommy, don't you want your daughter anymore? Why haven't you thought of a way to save me? There are only 10 hours left until midnight. If Bailey Han and Xia Dong don't divorce, the kidnappers will really rape me. Sob, please, let me go. The next 2 minutes were filled with Su Yunqian's pleas. The camera even gave a close-up of her face. Her sad and desperate eyes and tear-stained face moved everyone. At the end of the video, she was bawling her eyes out. Daddy, Mommy, please, save me. I don't want to die, she said in a muffled voice. This video was widely shared and many people shed tears of sympathy. Everyone blamed Bailey Han and Xia Dong and asked them to take responsibility and divorce to save Su Yunqian. The Su family saw the video immediately. Mrs. Su was heartbroken. She immediately went to Bailey's old house with the help of the servants. After entering the living room, she knelt in front of Bailey Han and Xia Dong without saying a word and cried, "Ao Han, Xia Dong, I beg you, save my daughter. Please save my daughter. Auntie, please get up first. We can talk about it slowly." Xia Dong quickly bent down to help her up. Bailey Jing also helped her. "Auntie, what are you doing? Please get up first. We can talk about it calmly." Mrs. Su knelt on the ground and cried with her hands covering her mouth. "There's no other way. The police haven't found any clues. Yunqian will be raped in 9 hours. How can I talk about it slowly? I beg you, please save my daughter." Bailey Han frowned and held her arm. "Auntie, don't be agitated. Get up first. We will definitely think of a way." Mrs. Su cried and shook her head, refusing to get up. "If you don't promise me, I won't get up." Hui Lan. Old Madam couldn't stand it anymore. She slammed her crutch on the floor and said, "I know you're worried about Yunqian, but you can't lose your decorum. Look at yourself now. What are you doing? Ah Han, quickly pull her up. If you have anything to say, sit down and talk." After all, the old madam was still dignified, and Mrs. Su still had to be careful of her. She sat down on the sofa with everyone's help, and tears rolled down her face. "Auntie, I only have one daughter. Yunqian has never made enemies with anyone. Why did this happen to her? I'm here today to beg you to help her. If she is raped by the kidnappers, then her life will be ruined." Mrs. Su's words seemed to be pleading, but in fact, they implied deep dissatisfaction. Like the public opinion outside, she also believed that it was Bailey Han and Xia Dong's fault that her daughter was kidnapped. Old Madam narrowed her eyes and said in a low voice, "There are still 9 hours before the kidnappers' deadline. The police are in full swing. It's too early to panic. But if the police can't find anything, are we just going to watch Yunqian be raped?" Mrs. Su covered her mouth and cried. Old Madam's expression froze. Mrs. Su cried even louder. "Ah Han, Xia Dong, I beg you, please save Yunqian. You can divorce first. When the kidnappers release Yunqian, you can remarry. It won't affect you too much." Bailey Han's eyes were complicated. The kidnapper's request was obviously aimed at him and Xia. Then, Yunqian was really innocent and implicated. He felt guilty, but he absolutely couldn't exchange Xia Dong for Su Yunqian. He held Xia Dong's hand tightly and said in a low voice, "Auntie, the kidnappers not only asked us to divorce, but also asked Xia to pick up Yunqian. This is a disguised request to replace Yunqian with Xia. I can't do that. Then you can just stand by and watch Yunqian get raped. Ah Han, don't forget, 5 years ago, you had a car accident and almost lost your legs. Who was the one who protected you and helped you stand up again?" Bailey Han gritted his teeth. "I know, I haven't forgotten. I owe Yunqian a favor, but Xia Xia is my wife. That can't be changed in this life. I can't let any harm come to her. Auntie, there's still time. I'll find a way to save Yunqian. The old lady said, instead of sitting here and wasting time, it's better to find a way to find Yunqian's whereabouts. Ahand, contact the police and ask them if there's any new progress. After investigation, the police found a witness near the T Street. The witness said that he saw a woman walking on the street, and then a black Santana suddenly braked. The person in the car seemed to have an argument with the woman, and the woman was pulled into the car. The police took Su Yunqian's photo and asked the witness to identify the woman who was taken away. They confirmed that the woman was Su Yunqian. The witness remembered the license plate number, and the police found that the Santana belonged to a car rental company. The car rental company had returned the car yesterday. The police checked the ID number left by the car rental company and found that it was a fake one. 4 hours later, the identity of the car rental company was still not found. Wang Kai and Yang Xiao carefully interrogated the staff at the car rental registration office. The staff said the person who rented the car was a tall man. He was wearing a hat, glasses, and a black jacket. When he returned the car, the tires were full of mud. The mud splashed all over the car door and body. Wang Kai said, "Where is the car? We want to see it. 2 of you, this way please." The staff led them to the black Santana and said, because it was just returned yesterday evening, it hasn't been cleaned yet. Indeed, as the staff said, the body of the car was covered with mud and dirty. Wang Kai got into the car, put on gloves on his hands, and rummaged for a long time in the car seat. He didn't even find a hair, let alone things like cigarette ash. It was estimated that the other party had prepared in advance to avoid leaving any clues. It hasn't rained in City A these 2 days. Where did the car go? Why was there so much mud on the car? Wang Kai frowned and said, "Yang Xiao, contact the bureau and ask them to check the traffic video of this car." The bureau chief mobilized a large number of people and asked them to hold the video and carefully search for the whereabouts of the Santana. Finally, they found that it had been driven to the eastern suburbs of the city. Yang Xiao calmly analyzed, the eastern suburbs of the city are under construction. There are many construction sites. Could the mud be from the car passing by those sites? Yang Xiao, let's go to the eastern suburbs of the city. The two got into the off-road vehicle and drove all the way to the eastern suburbs of the city. There were many half-built high-rise buildings, and there were still overpasses. There were workers busy on the construction site. They got out of the car and parked it on the side of the road. They took the photo of Su Yunqian and asked around. The workers said that they had never seen her. Then they took the photo of the black Santana and asked, but they also said that they had never seen it. There were construction sites about a mile away. It was too time-consuming for Wang Kai and Yang Xiao to check in detail. Before they came, they applied for support from the bureau. Soon, the support people came and searched all the buildings in this area, but they still couldn't find the whereabouts of Su Yunqian. Did we guess wrong? Yang Xiao stood on the high floor and looked into the distance with a heavy face. The night was dark, and the tense atmosphere surrounded everyone present. The contractor who led them upstairs suddenly patted his head and said, "Police colleagues, you're looking for a place with muddy roads. Other than this construction site, there's another place that meets the requirements." Wang Kai hurriedly said, "Where?" The contractor pointed to a mountain not far away. It was not very clear in the night. He said, "That mountain is a dirt road. Once it rains, it will be muddy. There's no way for cars to pass. The road will only get better after 4 or 5 days of clear weather. It just so happened that there was a heavy rain 4 days ago. I think the dirt road there is still muddy." Wang Kai raised his hand to look at his watch. It was already 8 o'clock in the evening. They only had 4 hours left. He waved his hand. Everyone, let's hurry to that mountain. While the police were nervously tracking, the Sue family gathered at the Old Bailey residence. Father Sue Boland's face was cold and his eyes were anxious. Madame Sue nervously clutched her handkerchief. Sue Jean Ann's thin lips were tightly pursed, and his entire body emitted a cold aura. He was like a sharp sword that could be unsheathed and hurt people at any time. The faces of the Bailey family members were also not good. Everyone's eyes were cast on the old European-style pendulum clock. Every time the pendulum clock rang, their nerves became more tense. The oppressive and tense atmosphere was suffocating. Dong! The pendulum rang again. There were only 3 hours left before it was 12 o'clock. Sue Jean Ann could no longer hold it in. He suddenly stood up, took his phone, and walked towards the living room door. Bailey Yun suddenly stood up and quickly blocked him. He stared at him coldly. Jean Ann, what are you trying to do? Sue Jean Ann's eyes burned with flames. What else can I do? Of course I'm going to call Chief Fong and have him gather all the media. Bailey Yun's foxy eyes narrowed dangerously. You want to sacrifice Xia Dong to save Su Yunqian? Sue Jean Ann glared at him fiercely and said word by word, that's my sister. Bailey Yun's heart throbbed. Although he didn't like Su Yunqian, he had known her for so many years. Of course, he was worried. However, he would never agree to exchange Xia's safety for her safety. He snorted coldly. So what if we gather the media? The Civil Affairs Bureau has already closed. Are we going to apply for a divorce certificate for them? Su Jinan took out a document from his pocket. The divorce certificate. I've already prepared it. It's a fake certificate. It costs $10. As long as we can delay the kidnappers, we can buy more time for the police. Foley, Songshu 566. Chapter 221. He didn't expect Su Jean Ann to have prepared a fake divorce certificate. Bailey Yun seemed to have no reason to stop him. Xia Dong suddenly stepped forward and said, I agree. Everyone's eyes were on her. She pursed her lips and said, I agree to hold a press conference. Mr. Su, please contact Mr. Xiao. Bailey Han's eyes suddenly narrowed. He suddenly grabbed her wrist and said in a low voice, Jean Ann, wait for another hour. I believe the police will find Yunqian. No need to wait. Xia Dong tilted her head and smiled at him. If there are only 2 hours left, Mr. Xiao won't have enough time to contact the media. Ah Han, it's just a fake divorce, isn't it? He stared into her eyes seriously and said firmly, it's just a fake divorce. He would never put her in danger. After Xiao Qifeng received Su Jean Ann's call, he quickly informed his assistant to contact the gold medal reporters of various media outlets and the hotel to prepare the venue for the press conference. Everything was settled. There was only an hour left, but there was still no good news from the police. Everyone rushed to the press conference venue with heavy hearts. The venue was filled with reporters. Many of these people had just crawled out of bed and were still a little dispirited. However, when they saw the people from the Su family and the Bailey family appear, it was as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Their spirits were lifted and they were ready to shoot. Bailey Han and Xia Dong sat in the middle of the stage. There was a small red book in front of them. The reporters sitting in front of them immediately guessed that it was the divorce certificate. As time passed, the venue gradually quieted down. There was no sound at all. Everyone's nerves were stretched taut. The Su family members sitting in the first row kept looking at the watch on their wrists. Their hearts were about to stop. Tick-tock, tick-tock. 10 minutes left. 9 minutes, 8 minutes, Only 6 minutes left until 12 o'clock. There was still no news from the police. The old madam closed her eyes and sighed. Su Jinan's face was gloomy, like the sky before a storm. He grabbed the microphone with his right hand and said concisely, "Thank you all for coming. The press conference will now begin." Bailey Han glanced at the watch on his wrist. There were only 5 minutes left. If he didn't open his mouth, Su Yunqian would probably be in trouble. He turned to look at Xia Dong apologetically. Xia Dong smiled and comforted him with a smile. He moved the microphone in front of him, made up his mind, and said in a deep voice, "Bailey Han, hereby announce that Xia Dong and I have completed the divorce procedures this afternoon. Please bear witness." Bailey Han picked up the divorce certificate in front of him and held it up high. The reporters below the stage immediately snapped their shutters, and there were even cameras broadcasting live on the internet. According to the kidnappers' request, they needed to film the divorce certificate from all angles. Bailey Han opened the certificate and showed the contents in front of the camera. He held the certificate up high and glanced at his watch. There was only 1 minute left. His heart clenched tightly. Wang Kai suddenly called. Su Jinan couldn't care less. In front of everyone, he pressed the answer button and said anxiously, "Officer Wang, how is it?" Wang Kai gasped for breath. "We found the kidnappers' hiding place, but it was too late. The kidnappers have already moved Miss Su to another place." Su Jinan's heart sank, but he still had a glimmer of hope. He hoped that this press conference could fool the kidnappers. Beep beep, beep beep, the phones of the reporters below the stage rang. They checked their phones and received a video file. They immediately shouted, "It's from the kidnappers." Beep beep. Everyone below the stage received the video file from the kidnappers. The staff projected the newly released video onto the big screen in the venue. In the video, Su Yunqian was no longer in the room from before. The walls of this room were dark and it looked like a basement. She was still tied to the chair. Her hands trembled as she held a piece of white paper, crying in despair. Click. The sound of a bullet being loaded could be heard. She was forced to suppress her cries under the kidnappers' coercion. Trembling, she read the contents of the paper aloud. "Bailey Han, Xia Dong, your divorce certificate is fake. You want to fool me. You're too naive. I gave you a chance, but you didn't cherish it. Now, in front of all of you, I'm going to take Su Yunqian," she wailed loudly and couldn't read anymore. A hand suddenly appeared on the screen. The hand was wearing a rubber glove. It grabbed Su Yunqian's hair and slammed her against the back of the chair. She was in so much pain that her face was distorted. "Ah, it hurts, please, let me go," a black figure appeared on the screen. His back was facing the camera, and his face was covered by a mask. It was impossible to see his face clearly. The position he stood at was very skillful, and it was just right for Su Yunqian to be exposed to the camera. He untied the rope around her waist and pushed her to the ground. Su Yunqian's hands and feet were still tied. She crawled on the ground in despair and stepped back. "Please, don't come over, don't come over." The man approached her step by step, grabbed her hair, and slapped her hard on the cheek. "What should we do? What should we do?" Mrs. Su was about to break down when she saw her daughter being abused. She shook Su Bolan's arm fiercely. "Honey, what should we do? How can we save Yunqian?" The old lady closed her eyes in despair. Her ears were filled with Su Yunqian's painful screams. Bai Jinqiu was so scared that her face turned pale. Xia Dong was so nervous that her heart almost stopped beating. She stared at the screen and dug her nails into her palms. "It's all my fault. If I hadn't really gotten a divorce, I wouldn't have caused her to be murdered." Bailey Han's heart ached. The guilt almost suffocated him, but he didn't regret it at all. The kidnappers were ruthless and could do anything. Even if he really divorced, the kidnappers would still let Xia Dong take Su Yunqian's place to suffer. Some reporters were filming the reaction of the Su family and Bailey's family. Su Jinan was furious. Like a crazy beast, he suddenly rushed forward, grabbed all their cameras, and smashed them on the ground. These reporters had no sympathy. The victim's family was already so sad, but they only knew how to film the news and catch the hot news. "Let me go, you bastard, let me go," a tragic cry came from the big screen. At this time, Su Yunqian had been pinned down by the man in black. Her clothes had been torn, revealing her white and tender skin. The man in black grabbed her hands and put them above her head. His other hand reached to her feet and untied the rope around her ankles. Her legs were free, and she immediately kicked the man on top of her. The man didn't move at all. He waved his hand, and two more hands appeared on the screen. They grabbed Su Yunqian's feet from behind and pulled them apart. Su Yunqian was like a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. The photographer took a close-up of her face. Her face was full of despair, and her eyes were unfocused. She kept screaming, "Go away, go away." The man controlled her hands with one hand, and touched her chest with the other. Because of the angle of the camera, her chest was not completely exposed. Part of it was blocked by the man's body, but from the man's actions, everyone could guess. The man's hand reached between her legs. There was only a tearing sound. The man threw a pair of torn underwear in front of her, deliberately letting everyone see it clearly. "You beast, I'll kill you." Su Yunqian was still making her last struggle. She suddenly raised her head and bit the man's arm. The man raised his other hand and slapped her face. Her head suddenly tilted and hit the floor. Mrs. Su couldn't bear it anymore and fainted in Su Bolin's arms. Su Bolin pinched her philtrum. Bai Jinqiu's face was pale. She put her hands together and prayed to the gods to save Su Yunqian's life. "Don't play it anymore. Turn it off, quickly turn it off." Su Jin and rushed to the staff like a madman and turned off the video. However, all the reporters in the audience received the video file. He could turn off the video on the computer, but how could he turn off the other people's phones? A painful howl came from the phone and echoed throughout the press conference. The man in black lay on Su Yunqian's body and moved his body. Everyone knew what that meant. Some people couldn't watch it anymore and turned off the video. There were also female reporters who shed tears of sympathy. Without the kidnapper's contact information, they couldn't communicate with him directly. They didn't even have the chance to stop. Su Jin and was desperate and regretful. He should have insisted on Bailey Han and Xia Dong divorce. Then, he wouldn't have caused his own sister to be humiliated. He slammed his fist on the table and blood flowed down the back of his hand. He suddenly turned his head and glared fiercely at Bailey Han with anger and pain in his eyes. Before anyone could react, he pounced on Bailey Han like a raging lion and punched Bailey Han's face. Bailey Han didn't dodge, nor did he counterattack. He forcefully took on the heavy punch that was filled with anger. Click, click, click. The camera flashes kept going. Some reporters wanted to see the world in chaos. Su Jin's eyes were bloodshot. He waved his fist and wanted to punch him again. The staff next to him reacted and quickly grabbed his arm. Su Jin was so strong that it took 2 staff members to hold him back. His handsome face was distorted with anger. He glared at Bailey Han. "Bailey Han, you bastard. It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, Yunqian wouldn't be in trouble. Let me go. I'm going to kill that bastard." Bailey Han's cheeks were swollen and there was blood on the corner of his lips. He didn't dodge or avoid. He stood like a statue and said in a low voice, "Let him go." Welfare, Shinwu 799. Chapter 222. Of course, the staff refused to let go. If anything happened, the hotel would have to take responsibility. Xiaodong knew that Bailey Han didn't fight back because he felt guilty, but as his wife, she couldn't let anyone hurt her husband. She stepped forward and stood in front of Bailey Han. She spread her arms to protect him and silently resisted Su Jinhen. Bailey Han was shocked. He grabbed her hand and pulled her behind him. "Wifey, get out of the way." Xiaodong's feet seemed to have grown roots. She gritted her teeth and said, "I won't." Old Madam and Bai Jinshu were so shocked that they stood up from their seats. Xiaodong was pregnant. What if something happened to her? Su Bolin stood up and said angrily, "Jinhen, calm down." The moment Su Jinhen saw Xiaodong, the anger in his eyes intensified. However, he was still rational and knew that he couldn't hit a woman. Moreover, Xiaodong was pregnant. After his father roared, he stopped struggling and retracted his arm. Old Madam and the others broke out in cold sweat. When the press conference ended, everyone was exhausted. Old Madam supported her old body and said a few words to the reporters, hinting that they shouldn't go overboard with their reports. Su Bolin and Su Jinhen supported Mrs. Su, who had almost gone limp, and left the venue first. Bailey's family walked last. On the way home, no one spoke. Bailey Jing's eyes were red. She hugged Bai Jinshu's arm and shrank in a corner. Bailey Han stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window with a cold expression. His deep eyes stared outside. No one knew what he was thinking. Xiaodong took the ointment that could quickly treat external injuries from Xiao Bao and quietly walked in front of Bailey Han. She applied some ointment on her finger and stood on her tiptoes to wipe the wound on his cheek. He was like a puppet, allowing her to do as she wished without any reaction. She wiped it bit by bit, her heart aching. After she finished applying the medicine, he suddenly reached out and hugged her tightly. His deep voice was a little hoarse. 5 years ago, I was in a car accident. The first person I saw when I woke up was her. When I knew that my legs were injured and I couldn't stand, she was the one who comforted me and accompanied me through my rehabilitation. Something cold slid down her neck. She closed her eyes, hiding the sadness and guilt inside, and used her hand to gently stroke his back. Xiaodong felt that she had really done something wrong. She should have advocated for a divorce. This way, she wouldn't have let Ah Han feel guilty. It had been a lifetime. The video of Su Yunqian being raped once again went viral on the internet. The criticism was directed at Bailey Han and Xiaodong. Even the stock prices of Xinghao Group and Bailey Group began to decline. The Bailey family was facing an unprecedented crisis. Xiaodong didn't dare to go out at all. Her family didn't dare to let her go out either, lest she be slandered by those angry people. The police didn't give up on the search. That night, they finally found a secluded house on the mountain mentioned by the contractor. They confirmed that it was the place where the kidnappers were. Unfortunately, the house was already empty. Other than a chair and a few pieces of hemp rope, there was nothing else in the room. In the trash can outside the house, they found fast food boxes and instant noodles boxes. After identification, only Su Yunqian's fingerprints were on those items. The kidnappers and their accomplices didn't leave any clues. Where did the kidnappers transfer Su Yunqian to? No one could answer this question. Each day felt like a year to the two families. Bailey Han hadn't smiled from the bottom of his heart for many days. Xiaodong looked at his stiff smile and felt sorry for him. Once, she couldn't help but hug him and whisper, "If you don't want to smile, don't smile." "I'm sorry." Bailey Han stroked her long hair. Her eyes were sore as she shook her head. He didn't do anything wrong to her. She just didn't want him to torture her anymore. 5 days passed, and there was still no sign of Su Yunqian. The kidnappers didn't send any more messages. It was as if they had disappeared from the face of the earth. Mrs. Su was on the verge of collapse. One morning, Xia Dong was pushing old Master Xia Dong for a walk in the courtyard. Mrs. Su rushed in like a madwoman and grabbed Xia Dong's arm. She yelled angrily, "It's all your fault, you jinx. Give my daughter back to me, give my daughter back to me." Mrs. Su shook Xia Dong's arm and even reached out to hit her. Fortunately, Xia Dong was prepared and grabbed her wrist. "Mrs. Su, calm down." "How can I calm down? If it wasn't for you, my daughter wouldn't have been abandoned by Ahan. If it wasn't for you, she wouldn't have been kidnapped and humiliated. It's all your fault. I'll kill you." Mrs. Su was blinded by hatred. She didn't care about her image. Her right hand was grabbed by Xia Dong and she couldn't move. She grabbed Xia Dong's hair with her left hand and pulled. "Young madam, are you okay?" "Mrs. Su, let go of her." A servant heard the noise and ran over. He grabbed Mrs. Su's arm from behind and tried to pry her hand away. However, Mrs. Su was very strong. When she saw that someone was coming to stop the fight, she suddenly raised her leg and kicked Xia Dong in the stomach. Xia Dong's hair was pulled and her right hand was grabbed by Mrs. Su's right hand. There was no way for her to dodge. She instinctively reached out with her left hand to block the kick. Fortunately, Xia Dong was also very strong. She grabbed Mrs. Su's ankle tightly and prevented Mrs. Su from kicking her in the stomach. "Help!" The servant hurriedly called for help. "Huilan, what are you doing? Let go of her." Old Madam heard the noise and rushed over with her walking stick. She was so angry that she almost vomited blood when she saw the two people in front of her. Mrs. Su was determined to teach Xia Dong a lesson. She didn't listen to Old Madam and fought against Xia Dong with all her might. 2 more servants rushed up, and the 3 of them finally managed to separate Madame Su and Xia Dong. When Bailey Han heard the news and rushed over, he saw his battered wife and angry Mrs. Su being pulled apart by the servants. He saw Xia Dong's hair in a mess and Mrs. Su throwing away a strand of hair in her hand. Anger surged in his heart and he clenched his fists. But in the end, he suppressed it and looked coldly at Mrs. Su. "Auntie, this isn't Xia Dong's fault. If you want to settle the score, put it on me. You think I don't dare? I'll settle the score with you right now, you heartless bastard. If it weren't for you, Yunqian wouldn't have run out of the church and been kidnapped." Mrs. Su only had hatred in her heart. She rushed up and slapped him on the cheek. Bailey Han didn't dodge. He took the slap. She reached out to hit him again, but Bailey Han easily grabbed her wrist and said coldly, "Auntie, calm down. Look at yourself now. You're no different from a shrew." Mrs. Su felt a sharp pain in her wrist, which seemed to irritate her nerves. She dazedly let go of her hand and slumped into the chair, crying loudly. "Yunqian, my daughter, where are you?" Mrs. Su cried her heart out. Old Madam couldn't help but tear up. She walked up and patted her shoulder gently. "Huilan, don't be sad. Yunqian will come back." "Auntie, what should we do? It's been 8 days, and Yunqian's still missing. What if the kidnapper killed her?" Mrs. Su hugged Old Madam's waist and cried even harder. "I only have one daughter. If the kidnapper kills her, he'll be struck by lightning." Old Madam let her hug her and gently patted her back to comfort her. She gave Bailey Han and Xia Dong a look, indicating that they should leave first. When they returned to their room, Bailey Han pulled Xia Dong to sit on the sofa. He stood beside her and held her head with both hands. He looked carefully and found that a small part of her hair near her right ear had been pulled out. He rubbed her scalp with heartache and asked softly, "Does it hurt?" "It doesn't hurt. I'm fine. Don't worry." Xia Dong pulled his hand down from her head and let him sit beside her. "Let me see your face." There were clear fingerprints on his handsome face. She bit her lip and carefully applied medicine for him. After the big scene, Mrs. Su gradually regained some rationality. She apologized in front of old madam, but she didn't want to see Bailey Han and Xia Dong again. She washed her face, tidied up her makeup, and left the old mansion under the escort of the butler. Although the Su family didn't come looking for trouble again, the shackles that bound Bailey Han and Xia Dong's hearts didn't disappear. 5 days later, when everyone thought that Su Yunqian had met with a mishap and would never come back, the police suddenly found her. When the police sent her home, she was wearing a large police coat. Her hair was messy and her face was dirty. When she saw people approaching, her eyes revealed a terrified expression. She screamed, waved her arms, and kicked her feet to prevent people from coming closer. When the Su family heard that the police had found her, they were very happy. But when they saw her like this, they all cried sadly. Mrs. Su's body swayed. If it wasn't for Su Bolin supporting her, she would have fallen to the ground. A female police officer glanced at Su Yunqian hiding behind the car seat and explained, "When we found Miss Su in the suburbs, she was already like this. Maybe it was caused by excessive shock." "Thank you, officer." "Thank you so much." Su Bolin said a few words of thanks and then asked the maid to come forward and pull Su Yunqian out of the car. Su Yunqian screamed and kicked, but she refused to come out. Mrs. Su went forward with tears streaming down her face. "Yunqian, my good daughter, I'm your mommy. Come out, mommy will take you home." Su Yunqian acted as if she didn't know her. There was no other expression in her eyes except for fear. She hid behind the car seat in fear and screamed, go away, don't come over. "My good daughter, it's me. I'm your mommy." Mrs. Su didn't expect her daughter to not recognize her. Her heart ached so much that she cried. Mrs. Su didn't give up. She called her name softly and kept comforting her. She gradually calmed down and wasn't as agitated as before. Her eyes were filled with confusion. Mommy. Awesome novel, Xinwu 799. Chapter 223. Yes, it's me. I'm your mommy. Yunqian, come here and let mommy hug you. Hearing her daughter call her, even if it was a question, she was overjoyed and opened her arms. Su Yunqian bit her lips and seemed to be hesitating. She was like a frightened rabbit, quietly poking her head out a little. But when she saw so many strangers outside, she immediately shrank back in shock. Madame Su quickly waved her hand. "Hubby, Jinan, back away." She patiently opened her arms and said softly, "Yunqian, I'm your mommy. I won't hurt you. Come here, let's go home." Su Yunqian carefully took a few steps forward and secretly glanced at the people outside. Su Bolin and the others were far away. Madame Su gently called a few more times. Su Yunqian finally gathered her courage and carefully got out of the car and into her arms. Madame Su held back her tears and gently patted her back. "Good girl, mommy will take you home. No one will hurt you anymore." It was not until Su Yunqian got out of the car that everyone saw clearly that her legs were also covered with wounds. Some were from being beaten, and some were from being scratched by branches. Everyone was heartbroken. Su Bolin couldn't help but ask the female police officer in a low voice, "Officer, how did you find my daughter?" The female police officer said, "Someone found Miss Su in the suburbs and called the police." When we arrived, Miss Sue was pacing back and forth by the riverbank. She was not in a clear state of mind. I think she escaped by herself. Still no news of the kidnapper? Sue Boland's eyes were filled with hatred. If he knew who was harming his daughter, he would definitely let that person die a horrible death. I'm sorry, there are no clues at the moment. If there is any news, we will inform you immediately. Sue Boland thanked her again. The female police officer got into the car and returned to the police station. Because Su Yunqian was afraid of strangers, Su Jinan had already asked the servants to leave. He and Sue Boland also stayed far away. They didn't dare to get close, fearing that they would trigger her emotions. Mrs. Su helped Su Yunqian up the stairs and back to her room. She hugged her shoulders and curled up on the sofa, shivering. Her eyes were unfocused, and there was only confusion in them. Mrs. Su's heart ached. She hugged her tightly and said softly, "Yunqian, don't be afraid. You're home now. Daddy and Mommy will protect you." Su Yunqian didn't say a word. She stared blankly at her bare feet, her shoulders trembling slightly. "Yunqian, Mommy will help you take a bath, then you can have a good sleep, okay?" Mrs. Su gently tidied up her messy long hair. She still didn't say anything, so Mrs. Su took it as a yes. She held her hand and walked her to the bathroom. She turned on the hot water and asked Gigai to wait inside while she went out to get a clean towel and a bathrobe. The hot water flowed slowly, and the water in the bathtub gradually overflowed. "Yunqian, come, take off your clothes first." Mrs. Su put her hands on her shoulders, intending to take off her jacket. She suddenly screamed as if she had gone crazy. "Go away, don't touch me." She hugged her chest in horror and shivered as she stepped back. Mrs. Su's nose twitched, and she almost cried. She softly comforted her. Okay, I won't touch you. Good girl, take off your clothes and take a bath yourself, okay?" The rape incident must have left a shadow in her heart, so she didn't allow others to take off her clothes. She shrunk and carefully leaned against the bathtub, glancing at Mrs. Su from time to time. Her eyes were full of vigilance. Mrs. Su had no choice but to leave the bathroom and gently close the door. Mrs. Su was worried that something would happen to her daughter, so she stayed at the door and didn't dare to leave. She only felt relieved when she heard the sound of running water. She waited outside for more than an hour before the sound of running water stopped. After another 10 minutes, Su Yunqian still hadn't come out. Mrs. Su panicked and knocked on the door, calling her daughter's name softly, but she didn't hear any response. Mrs. Su's heart tightened. She hurriedly opened the bathroom door and rushed in. She found her daughter wrapped in a bathrobe carelessly with her arms around her shoulders. She was barefooted and curled into a ball in the corner. "Yunqian, good girl, go out with Mommy." Mrs. Su tentatively held her wrist. Seeing that she didn't resist, she helped her up from the ground. After returning to the bedroom, her hair was still dripping. Mrs. Su took a towel and dried her hair with a hairdryer. Mrs. Su wanted to apply medicine for her wounds, but she silently protested, unwilling to let Mrs. Su touch her. Mrs. Su could only put the medicine in front of her and let her apply it herself. In front of her mother, Su Yunqian didn't want to apply medicine. She walked straight to the bed and crawled under the quilt, covering herself tightly. She didn't look safe at all. Coming out of her daughter's room, Mrs. Su was physically and mentally exhausted. She walked to the living room with heavy steps. Sue Boland and Su Jin and were both there. Sue Boland asked, "How is Yunqian?" Mrs. Su held her forehead with one hand. "She seems to be badly frightened. Even when I touched her, she rejected and screamed." Su Jin and frowned. "Dad, Mom, I think it's better to ask a doctor to check on Yunqian." Sue Boland was silent for a moment and said, "Jin, find a trustworthy expert and ask him to check on Yunqian. Mrs. Su thought for a moment and said, should we inform the Bailey that Yunqian is back? Su Jin's face darkened. He said coldly, will they still care about Yunqian's life? Su Bolan's face didn't look good either. He said lightly, you can't say that. We still have to be polite. Huilan, call the old madam and tell her. Okay. Mrs. Su immediately took the landline and dialed the Bailey's number. She asked the butler to transfer the call to the old madam's room. When the old madam heard that Su Yunqian was back, she said, ba, several times and asked about her current situation with concern. Mrs. Su sighed and said, Auntie, although Yunqian is back, she's not very clear-headed because of the shock. She can't even recognize her father and brother. The old madam persuaded softly, Huilan, it's good that she's back. Yunqian is just temporarily frightened and will recover soon. When is it convenient for you? I want to come and see her. Auntie, I appreciate your kindness. But Yunqian is still rejecting outsiders and doesn't let anyone get close to her. I think you should wait until she's better. That's good. Huilan, if you need any help, just tell us. Don't be shy. The old madam also felt guilty about Su Yunqian's kidnapping. She hoped that she could do something to make up for it. After the old madam hung up the phone, she immediately told the good news to the whole family. Everyone was relieved. However, when the old madam mentioned that Su Yunqian was not clear-headed, everyone became worried again. They could only wait for the doctor's diagnosis. Su Jin contacted a psychiatrist. During the diagnosis, Su Yunqian didn't want anyone to get close to her. She screamed at the psychiatrist and punched and kicked him. In the end, she had no choice but to be injected with a tranquilizer. After the diagnosis, the psychiatrist said that Su Yunqian suffered from acute psychogenic psychosis because of the shock. The typical symptoms were absent-mindedness, impairment of consciousness, depression, anxiety, and other emotions. She might even have hallucinations, sleepwalking, and other symptoms. The psychiatrist also said that her symptoms were serious and recommended hospitalization. The Su family had no other choice but to send Su Yunqian to the hospital. After a few days of psychotherapy and medication, Su Yunqian's mental state improved. Su Bolan and Su Jin went to visit her. Although she wouldn't communicate with them, she no longer screamed and rejected them. When the old madam heard that Su Yunqian was getting better, she decided to visit her with Bai Jinxiu. In the VIP ward, Su Yunqian was quietly lying on the bed. The wounds on her face had already healed, and she had regained her former beauty. However, her cheeks were a lot thinner, and her complexion wasn't too good either. It was pale and sickly. When everyone entered, she didn't react. She just looked at the ceiling quietly. The old madam sat on her bed and said softly, Yunqian, I'm Grandma. Do you remember me? Su Yunqian's eyes moved. She turned to look at her but didn't say anything. Yunqian, I'm Grandma Bailey. I even held you when you were young. The old madam tentatively held her hand. She didn't struggle. The corners of her lips moved slightly and slowly curled up. Mrs. Su was very excited. Auntie, Yunqian smiled. Good girl. The old madam's eyes were filled with tears. She patted the back of Su Yunqian's hand. The old madam told a few more interesting things about her when she was young. She listened quietly with a smile on her face. Yunqian, have a good rest. Grandma will come to see you in 2 days. Before leaving, the old madam put her hand under the quilt and said softly. Su Yunqian's lips moved. Han. Ever since Su Yunqian called Mrs. Su Mommy when she came home, she hadn't spoken to her. Mrs. Su was very excited when she heard her speak again. She said, Yunqian, what did you just say? Say it again. Su Yunqian's lips moved slightly and said clearly, Han. The old madam and Mrs. Su didn't understand what she meant. Bai Jinqiu suddenly said, is Yunqian talking about Han? What did she mean? Did Yunqian want to see Bailey Han? Mrs. Su's expression changed. Bailey Han was now married to Xia Dong. If she saw him, wouldn't Yunqian's condition be even more aggravated? The old madam sighed in her heart, but there was a smile on her face. She said softly, Yunqian, do you want to see Han? Su Yunqian nodded slightly. The corners of her lips were still curled up slightly, as if she was looking forward to his arrival. Mrs. Su and Bai Jinqiu looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. Finally, Mrs. Su sighed and said, why don't we ask Han to come and see Yunqian? Although Bai Jinqiu was a little worried, she couldn't refuse Mrs. Su since she asked. Add. Xinwu 799. Chapter 224. After returning home, Bai Jinqiu relayed the news to Bailey Han and Xia Dong. She wanted to hear their opinions. Xia Dong smiled. Han, Miss Su has been back for so long, but you haven't visited her yet. Why don't you visit her tomorrow? Bailey Han didn't object. The next day, Bailey Han informed Mrs. Su in advance that he was going to visit Su Yunqian. He hoped that Xia Dong would go with him. Xia Dong adjusted his jacket for him and said softly, I'd better not go. I don't want to upset her. He held her hand. I don't want you to misunderstand. She held his hand and smiled. I won't misunderstand. I believe in you. He kissed her cheek and said in a low voice, I won't let you down. When Bailey Han walked into Su Yunqian's ward, she was wearing a white hospital gown. She stood with her back facing the window, and the morning sun poured down on her body. She looked calm and serene. It was as if she didn't hear the footsteps. Even when Bailey Han walked to her side, she didn't turn to look at him. Her eyes were focused on the world outside the window. He didn't say anything and stood in front of the window with her. After a long time, she slowly turned around. Her delicate and beautiful face had lost a lot of weight. She looked lost as she tilted her head to look at him. Bailey Han's deep eyes moved. Her expression shocked him. She looked at him as if she was looking at a stranger. Su Yunqian suddenly blinked and asked softly, Who are you? Bailey Han's heart tightened. It was as if something was stuck in his throat. It was suffocating. He stared into her eyes and said slowly, My name is Bailey Han. Bailey Han. She repeated his words with a gentle voice. Suddenly, she grinned. Your name is the same as my boyfriend's. Bailey Han's body stiffened. An inexplicable sadness spread in his heart. But, he doesn't want me anymore. She suddenly covered her face and sobbed sadly. The more she cried, the sadder she became. She slowly squatted down like an abandoned child. She hugged her knees pitifully and curled herself up in a corner. She cried until she was out of breath. He doesn't want me anymore. He won't love me anymore. Bailey Han's eyes were filled with guilt. He reached out his hand to comfort her, but his hand froze in midair. He slowly retracted it and handed her a tissue. She took the tissue and wiped the tears from her face. After wiping her tears, she suddenly seemed like a different person. With a faint smile on her lips, she said softly, Bailey Han, are you here to visit me? If it weren't for her red eyes, Bailey Han would have thought that he was hallucinating. She tilted her head and asked with an innocent smile, Why aren't you saying anything? He pursed his lips. Yes, I'm here to visit you. Su Yunqian's smile grew brighter. Will you come to see me tomorrow? He was silent. She pulled a long face. I'm here every day. It's so boring. Finally, he nodded. I'll come again tomorrow. Thank you. She was like a child, cheering and clapping her hands. But in the next second, she seemed to have forgotten about it. She turned around and looked at the world outside the window. She was as quiet as a statue. Seeing her become like this, Bailey Han felt nothing but guilt in his heart. He said in a low voice, "Yunqian, I'm sorry." She turned a deaf ear to him and continued to walk away. He stood there for a while and looked at her back deeply. Finally, he left the ward. Bailey Han's figure appeared at the bottom of the hospital building. Su Yunqian stood in front of the window and watched his back disappear further and further away. There was no expression on her beautiful face. Bailey Han came out of the hospital and drove directly to the company. Xia Dong calculated the time and guessed that he should have arrived at the company. She called him. "Hubby, how's Su Yunqian's condition?" Bailey Han sat behind his desk and rubbed his eyebrows. "Not too good." He briefly explained the situation when they met. Xia Dong frowned. If she guessed correctly, Su Yunqian was showing signs of dissociative identity disorder. Bailey Han paused and said, "I promised her that I would visit her tomorrow." She was stunned and smiled. "Okay. Don't think too much." He just felt guilty and couldn't bear to reject her request. Moreover, he hoped that she would get better soon. Xia Dong smiled. "I understand. Don't worry about me. Go back to work. I won't disturb you." The corners of Bailey Han's lips curled up. "Kiss me." "I don't want to. I'm hanging up. Bye." Xia Dong shook her head in amusement. Su Yunqian's kidnapping case could be said to be a sensation. The media had been paying attention to her whereabouts, so after she returned, the media quickly received the news and quickly dug out that she had a mental problem and was receiving treatment. This attracted everyone's sympathy, and no one made a fuss about her being raped. Because of Su Yunqian's return, the criticism of Bailey's family also weakened. In addition, Xinghao Group and Bailey Group were good at crisis public relations, so the impact of this matter on the group was quickly minimized. Life gradually returned to normal, and Xia Dong began to pick up the little guys to and from school again. However, she didn't expect to meet Mika Keto when she picked up the little guys today. Mika Keto missed Xiao Bao and didn't have the chance to see him, so he waited for him at the school gate. Mika Keto hugged Xiao Bao and the two of them laughed as if there was no one else around. Xia Dong's car stopped by the side of the road, and she saw Mika Keto's tall and handsome figure at a glance. She didn't know how to face him, so she could only sit in the car and hesitate whether to go down to see him. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yi had already seen her car. He walked over steadily and knocked on the window. "Mommy, why aren't you coming down?" Xia Dong opened the car door and got out. She squatted in front of him and whispered, "Xiao Yi, pretend that you didn't see me." Xiao Yi's mouth twitched. "Are you hiding from Mika Keto?" Xia Dong quickly covered his mouth and whispered, "Don't be so loud." Xiao Yi widened his eyes and made a muffled sound. She relaxed her hand and whispered, "I'm not hiding from him. I'm just not ready to see him yet." Sigh, she was such a pitiful mother. She even had to explain these things to her son. Xiao Yi blinked to indicate that she understood. She then let go of his mouth. He sighed helplessly. "But mommy, the person you're hiding from has already seen you." Xia Dong suddenly looked up. Sure enough, a pair of long legs was walking in her direction. She looked up stiffly and saw Mika Keto's cold and handsome face. He was still carrying Xiao Bao in his arms. Xiao Bao gave her an "I sympathize with you" expression. She covered her face. She wanted to find a hole to hide in. Since she couldn't hide, she might as well face it bravely. She stood up abruptly and smiled stiffly at Mikakito. Brother Shin, why are you here? I'm here to see Xiao Bao. Mikakito put Xiao Bao down and stroked his head. Xiao Bao, get in the car with Xiao Yi first. Oh, okay. Xiao Bao patted Xiao Yi's shoulder. Xiao Yi, let's get in the car first. The two little rascals wiggled their little butts as they climbed into the car. They even lowered the window considerately and pretended that they were not going to eavesdrop on anything. In reality, their little heads were pressed tightly against the car door and their little ears were pricked up. Mikakito stared deeply at Xiaodong. His tall figure stood in front of her, exuding an oppressive aura. She clenched her fists nervously and smiled unnaturally. Brother Shin, I'm very happy that you're willing to attend our wedding. Mikakito suddenly took a step forward and was only a few centimeters away from her. She was so nervous that she didn't know what to do. He suddenly reached out and pulled her into his arms. He supported her back with one hand and pressed her head tightly against his chest. His voice was low and hoarse as if it came from his chest. Xia, if you get hurt, I'll stand here forever. Xia Dong's nose twitched and tears welled up in her eyes. She sobbed. Brother Shin, I'm not worth it. He held her hand and placed it over his heart. You're the only one who's ever been here. You'll be the only one in the future. She almost choked with sobs and shook her head. No, Brother Shin, don't be like this. If you're not happy, I'll feel guilty for the rest of my life. He looked up and wiped her tears gently, just like he had done for the past 5 years. The corners of his lips curled up and there was a gentle warmth in his eyes. He said word by word, there's only happiness when you're here. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She bit her lip tightly and her shoulders trembled slightly. He suddenly let go of her and took a step back. Because her eyes were filled with tears, she saw his figure become blurry. Even the smile on his face became dazed. He stood just a step away and smiled slightly. No matter what difficulties you encounter, no matter how hurt you get, you have to remember that you still have me. He turned and left. The setting sun dyed his back golden. As he walked further and further away, his back seemed lonely and lonely. Xia Dong covered her mouth and tried to control her emotions. After wiping her tears dry, she sat in the car. The two little guys sat in the back seat. Each of them held a small notebook in their hands and looked focused. Xia Dong coughed and said, Xiao Yi, Xiao Bao, buckle up. I'm going to drive. It's already buckled up. Xiao Bao blinked and said, Mommy, Xiao Guai also wants to see Uncle Shin. When you come to pick us up tomorrow, can you bring Xiao Guai with you? Xia Dong was stunned. Tomorrow? Will Uncle Shin come again tomorrow? Yeah, we've already made an appointment. Xiao Bao raised her chin proudly. Xiao Guai will be very happy if she knows. Xia Dong rubbed her eyebrows and said helplessly, All right, I'll go back tonight and ask for Xiao Guai's opinion. Xiao Bao cheered. Xiao Yi pursed his lips and looked fierce. He didn't say anything, but his dark eyes were filled with dissatisfaction. When he saw Mikakito hugging his mommy, he was already worried that Mikakito would snatch his mommy away from daddy. Xiao Bao even wanted to stir up trouble and created an opportunity for the two of them to meet. How annoying. Beauty novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 225. Xiaodong thought for a moment and said, Xiao Yi, Xiao Bao, don't tell anyone about your meeting with Uncle Mikakito, okay? Xiao Yi's face darkened as she said angrily, Not even Daddy. Are you trying to cheat on him? Xiaodong's face darkened. I'll tell your daddy. I'm just worried that the rest of the family will find out and cause unnecessary trouble. What, cheating on him? What nonsense are you spouting? Xiao Bao glared at Xiao Yi in annoyance. Don't talk nonsense. Mom isn't that kind of person. Uncle Shen isn't that kind of person either. You can't say for sure. Xiao Yi was still full of hostility towards Mikakito. As long as it was Daddy's love rival, he would treat him with hatred. Because of a disagreement, the two little fellows were like fighting roosters. They glared at each other and almost pounced on each other. Xia Dong's face darkened as she raised her voice. Both of you, sit down properly. If you continue to mess around, I'll punish you. Domestic violence. Child abuse. These two brats were already on the same side when it came to dealing with her. Xia Dong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She drove the car into the garage and led the two little fellows home. Just as she walked to the door of the living room, Xia Dong received a call from Isiki. She gestured for the two little fellows to go in first while she walked towards the garden. As she walked, she spoke on the phone. Siki, have you brought Nyonyo home? Yeah, we just came back. Nyonyo is doing her homework in her room. I'm calling you because I want to ask you about your recent situation. Xia Dong sat on the chair and pinched the space between her brows. I'm much better now. Luckily, Su Yunqian is back. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the face to stay in this house anymore. Isiki rolled her eyes. Silly, it's not your fault. I still feel like someone is deliberately messing with you behind your back. Xia Dong sighed. Maybe. The police still haven't found the whereabouts of the kidnappers. As for what the truth is, I don't think anyone cares. Right now, everyone thinks that Su Yunqian is the victim and I am the culprit. No matter what others say, as long as Bailey Han believes in you, there will be no problem. Xia Dong's smile was a little bitter. He trusted me very much, and he protected me very much at that time. However, when I see his guilty look now, I can't help but regret it. I should have gotten a divorce back then. Maybe I could have brought Su Yunqian back safely. Idiot, you went to pick up Su Yunqian. What if something happened to you? Don't forget that you have a baby in your belly. That baby can save Xiao Guai's life. If something happened to you, it would implicate the two babies. Isiki's words were like a bucket of water that suddenly woke Xia Dong up. She was stunned for a moment before she said slowly, let's not talk about me anymore. How are you and Lin Shihao doing now? Isiki paused. Just like that. Xia Dong asked carefully, is he still in contact with Bai Meiwei? Not in private, but they are still connected at work. Xia Dong rubbed her eyebrows. Yezi, you should start over. After all, he didn't do it on purpose. Isiki's voice deepened. That's how I convinced myself to forgive him, but I still feel a knot in my heart. Every time he wants to hug me, I feel like he's hugged another woman in the same way. I feel disgusted. Xia Dong was silent for a moment before she said, Yezi, give yourself some time. You will get better. Isiki tightened her grip on the phone. She forced a smile. I know. That's what he said too. Forget it, let's not talk about it anymore. I'm going to make dinner. He doesn't need to work overtime tonight, so he will be back early. All right then. Go ahead and do your work. Call me if anything happens. Xia Dong hung up the phone. She felt a little disappointed. The more you love someone, the easier it is to be hurt, right? Isiki put down the phone. She was also in a bad mood. She glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already past 6. Lin Shihao should be on his way back. She sighed silently and quickly walked to the kitchen. She wrapped the apron around her waist and started to prepare dinner. As she was cooking the braised fish, she heard the sound of the door opening. She smiled and called out to him as usual. "Hubby, you're back." Lin Shihao acknowledged her and quickly walked to the kitchen door. He suddenly took out his right hand from behind his back. A bouquet of fiery red roses was blooming. He smiled. "Honey, this is for you. Do you like it?" Isiki was stunned. She pursed her lips and smiled. "It's not a holiday today. Why did you buy flowers?" "I drove past the flower shop and suddenly thought that you would like it, so I bought it." Lin Shihao stuffed the roses into her arms and grabbed the spatula from her hand. He smiled. "Go arrange the flowers. I'll cook." You haven't changed yet." Isiki couldn't help but turn around and say as he pushed her to the door. "It's okay. Then put on the apron." Isiki put the flowers aside, took off her apron and handed it to him. "Honey, help me put it on." Lin Shihao stood in front of the gas stove with the spatula and looked at her with a smile. She walked behind him and reached her hands to his waist. She tied the apron around his waist and tied a bow behind his back. After tying it, she was about to pull her hands back when he suddenly turned around and grabbed her hands. He whispered, "Honey, how long has it been since we cooked together?" She was in a daze for a moment. She smiled. "It seems like it's been a few years. Ever since I was promoted to the head of the obstetrics and gynecology department, I have to work overtime every day. I even have to work overtime on weekends. I haven't taken you and Nyonyo out for a long time." He gently stroked the hair by her ear. "Have you ever resented me?" She held his hand. "I resented you at first, but I stopped resenting you later. I know that you want Nyonyo and I to live a better life." "Silly wife." Lin Shihao pulled her into his arms and kissed her forehead. She smiled and pushed him. "The fish is going to be burned." "Okay, I'll cook seriously." Lin Shihao smiled and let go of her. He turned around and scooped the fish from the pot onto a plate. Isiki found a vase and filled it with water. She put the roses in it and then placed the vase on the table in the living room. She washed her hands, set the table, and went to Nyonyo's room to call her daughter to eat. The family of three sat around the dining table. Nyonyo's childish voice told her about what happened in school. Lin Shihao was a good listener. He asked a few questions from time to time. When they talked about something interesting, the father and daughter laughed happily. Isiki smiled when she saw how happy they were. After dinner, Lin Shihao volunteered to wash the dishes. He teased, "Honey, washing dishes is a technical job. You can't go wrong if you leave it to me." Isiki smiled and said, "You're joking. I'll check it later. If it's not clean, you can wash it again. Please don't worry, my dear wife. I'll do my best to wash it clean." Lin Shihao made an exaggerated salute. Nyonyo smiled and leaned into Isiki's arms. She asked mischievously, "Mommy, is Daddy possessed by an alien? The person we're seeing now is definitely not the real Daddy, right?" Isiki couldn't help but laugh. She rubbed her daughter's hair. "Your daddy suddenly became kind. You two can laugh at me as much as you want. I'll just stay with those bowls and chopsticks." Lin Shihao shook his head and smiled. His eyes were full of love and gentleness. The mother and daughter laughed together. Lin Shihao was busy in the kitchen. His handsome figure appeared even more charming under the soft light. Isiki looked at him. She knew that he had been working hard these days. He was working hard to make up for his past shortcomings. He was really determined to start over. She should also work hard. After the kitchen was tidied up, the family of three sat on the sofa and watched TV. Yi Siki hugged her daughter. Lin Shihao deliberately moved closer to her. She pretended not to notice, but her body quietly leaned against his chest. Lin Shihao reached out and hugged her tightly. The TV was playing a comedy movie. Yi Siki and Nyonyo giggled. Lin Shihao hugged them in his arms and swore to himself that this time, he would protect this happiness. After the movie, Yi Siki took Nyonyo to the bathroom to take a shower. Lin Shihao suddenly received a call from Bai Mei Wei. He instinctively looked in the direction of the bathroom. He walked into the bedroom and closed the door. Mei Wei, what's the matter? Bai Mei Wei laughed foolishly. Senior, I want to see you. Lin Shihao frowned. Mei Wei, it's already very late. If there's anything, we can talk about it at work tomorrow. Her laughter turned into sobs. But I want to see you now. Lin Shihao heard the noise on her end. His frown deepened. He asked in a low voice, where are you now? She answered blankly, at the bar. You're drunk. Lin Shihao suppressed his anger. Leave the bar now and go home. Bai Mei Wei leaned against the bar counter and grabbed her hair painfully. She said drunkenly, if you don't come to see me, I won't go home. Lin Shihao paused and said in a low voice, I won't go to see you. Without waiting for her reply, he hung up the phone. He paced back and forth in the room a few times. He was still a little worried about her. After thinking about it, he finally called the Bai family's landline. The servant knew Lin Shihao. When he heard that Miss was drunk at the bar, he immediately expressed his gratitude and said that he would contact her to bring her home. When Lin Shihao ended the call, Yi Siki opened the bedroom door and walked in while drying her hair. She smiled and said, the two of us are out. Hurry and go take a shower. Okay, I'll go right away. Lin Shihao placed the phone on the bedside. After thinking about it, he chose to tell her. Honey, Mei Wei called me just now. She's drunk. I contacted the Bai family and asked them to pick her up. Okay, I got it. Yi Siki felt a little uncomfortable. However, since he took the initiative to tell her, she still smiled and said gently, hurry and go take a shower. After Lin Shihao went to the bathroom to take a shower, Yi Siki sat on the bed in a daze for a while. Finally, she sighed deeply. What was wrong with her? Since she had decided to work hard to redeem herself, she should be more relaxed. Shihao also told her everything. This was a good sign. Attention, Shinwu 799. Chapter 226. Su Yunqian's schizophrenia symptoms became more serious. Every time Bailey Han visited her, she was very happy at first, but suddenly she asked him indifferently, who is he? When she heard him say his name, she started crying again. She kept saying that he had abandoned her and that she wasn't good enough for him. After repeating this several times, Bailey Han didn't dare to say his name, fearing that it would irritate her. However, she didn't give up and drove him out of the ward without getting an answer. The Su family was very puzzled and asked the doctor, Doctor, Yunqian's condition had improved before. Why did it suddenly worsen? The doctor said that the patient might have suffered too much psychological damage in the past. During the treatment, she remembered some bad memories. Those injuries were beyond her mental endurance, so she removed those painful memories or consciousness activities from the entire mental plane to protect herself. However, because of this, she lost her integrity. To put it simply, Su Yunqian had already suffered from schizophrenia. She could have 2 or more different personalities at the same time. The doctor said that Su Yunqian's condition was mainly caused by harmful stimulation. She needed psychological treatment. The family members should create a relaxed and warm environment for her and not stimulate her emotions. The Su family trembled with fear. They didn't expect their daughter's condition to be so serious. Bailey Han, who accompanied them, also became very depressed after hearing the doctor's words. The next day, Bailey Han came to the hospital to visit Su Yunqian as promised. He knocked on the door of the ward, but didn't hear any response. He thought that the nurse was not inside now. He turned the doorknob, opened the door and walked in. The ward was empty, and there was no one in the bed. Bailey Han walked quickly to the bathroom and knocked on the door. "Yunqian, are you inside?" No one responded. He frowned and turned the doorknob. The door was locked from the inside. Suddenly, he heard the sound of something falling to the ground. A bad premonition immediately rose from his heart. He knocked hard on the door. "Yunqian, what are you doing inside? Open the door." It was dead silent inside. Feeling even more uneasy, Bailey Han made up his mind. He lifted his foot and kicked the door with all his might, making a loud noise. He kicked the door twice more, and with a bang, the door finally opened. Seeing the scene in front of him, his heart tightened. Su Yunqian was wearing a white bathrobe and lying in the bathtub. Her wrist had been cut, and blood was dripping from her fingers into the bathtub, dyeing the water red. Su Yunqian had fainted due to the loss of blood. A small knife fell on the floor, still stained with blood. His heart almost jumped out of his chest. He hurriedly picked her up from the bathtub and put her back on the bed. He pressed the emergency button on the bedside. The doctors and nurses quickly rushed over. Fortunately, the wound was not very deep and the bleeding stopped very quickly. The doctor criticized the Su family members and the nurses who had rushed over after hearing the news. "The patient is unconscious. How could you leave such a dangerous thing in her ward?" Because Su Yunqian was mentally ill and emotionally unstable, she could commit suicide or hurt others. Therefore, sharp weapons such as fruit knives were strictly prohibited in her room. Everyone knew this, and they were very careful not to bring any knives or other weapons in. Who brought in the small knife she used to cut her wrist? Everyone looked at each other and shook their heads. In the end, they unanimously guessed that Su Yunqian might have secretly brought it in before she was hospitalized. Thinking of this, everyone broke out in a cold sweat. If they hadn't discovered it in time, it was hard to say what would have happened. Su Yunqian's face was pale and bloodless. Even though she was unconscious, her brows were tightly knitted. Mrs. Su held back her tears. With the help of the nurses, they helped her change out of her wet clothes and changed the wet sheets and quilt. "Ahan, go to the company first. Your aunt and I will take care of her." Outside the corridor, Su Bolin looked serious. Bailey Han nodded. "I'll come to see her after work. Uncle, call me if you need anything." On the way to the company, Bailey Han's face was dark. His hands tightly held the steering wheel. His heart was still shocked and pained by the scene of Su Yunqian's suicide. Xia Dong knew that Bailey Han had been working hard recently. He had been running between the hospital and the company. Every time he came back from the hospital, he would be especially quiet. Although he didn't say anything in front of his family, she knew that he was under a lot of pressure. Xia Dong specially made ginseng chicken soup and made his favorite dishes. She prepared a lunchbox and drove to his company at lunchtime. She carried the lunchbox upstairs. The old employees all knew her and greeted her politely. She was still a little uncomfortable. This was the first time she came to the company to look for him after getting married. Linda stood up with a smile. "Madam, the president is still in a meeting. The meeting will be over in about 10 minutes. Do you want me to inform the president?" Xia Dong smiled politely. "No need. I'll go to his office and wait for a while. When he finishes the meeting, don't tell him that I'm here." Linda made an "okay" gesture and smiled. "Understood." Xiaodong said, "Thank you." When Bailey Han walked into the office, Xiaodong had already placed the dishes on the coffee table. The milky white chicken soup was fragrant, and the green vegetables were stir-fried with mushrooms. It was very appetizing just by looking at it. "Honey, why are you here?" Bailey Han's lips curved and his eyes were filled with surprise. Xiaodong walked forward and helped him loosen his tie. She smiled and said, "I saw that you've been too busy recently and was worried that you didn't eat properly, so I prepared a lunchbox. It's a love lunchbox." His slender fingers scratched her perky nose. She smiled. "If you say so." She hugged his arm and pulled him to the table. She stuffed a pair of chopsticks into his hands. "Hurry up and eat. It's going to get cold. Eat with me. It's boring to eat alone." Bailey Han stuffed the chopsticks back to her and picked up the other pair on the table. He chuckled. "Why don't you come to have lunch with me every day from now on?" Xiaodong thought about the expressions of the employees when they saw her and couldn't help but shiver. It's better to do this kind of thing once in a while. If I come every day, it won't affect your image in the eyes of the employees. Bailey Han drank a mouthful of the delicious chicken soup and looked slightly wronged. "What if I like the dishes you cook?" She rolled her eyes and smiled mischievously. "Then wait for me to cook for you tonight." "But I want to eat lunch too." His eyes were filled with smiles as he stared into her eyes. She pinched his high nose and smiled. "Then there's no other way." "Naughty." He ruffled her hair. She rolled her eyes and said, "How about this? After I'm done cooking, I'll send it to the front desk downstairs and you can ask Linda to bring it up for you." "Silly, I'm just teasing you. I can't bear to let my wife cook every day." He smiled gently. After the meal, Xiaodong took out the fruit salad from the lunchbox. She picked up a piece of fruit with a fork and brought it to his lips. He smiled and opened his mouth to take the fruit. Suddenly, he saw her frowning and covering her stomach with her left hand. He quickly swallowed the fruit and asked anxiously, "What's wrong? Does your stomach hurt?" She relaxed her brows and smiled. "It's nothing. The baby just moved a little." Only then did Bailey Han's anxious heart relax. Pleasantly surprised, he placed his palm on her abdomen. It was a pity that he didn't feel anything. However, this didn't hinder his excitement as he said gently, "Baby, I'm daddy." Xiaodong was amused. "The baby can't hear you yet." "He can hear you." Bailey Han simply squatted in front of her and gently pressed his face against her abdomen. He said gently, "Baby, I'm daddy. If you hear my voice, kick me with your little feet." The baby still didn't move. Bailey Han was a little disappointed. Although he was already a father of 3 children, this was the first time he had accompanied his pregnant wife and experienced the process from pregnancy to childbirth. So every time the baby moved a little, he was very excited and couldn't wait for the baby to communicate with him immediately. He was about to move his face away when he suddenly felt her stomach move. He shouted happily, "Honey, honey, the baby is kicking me." He heard me. He was like a child, smiling brightly. Xiaodong couldn't help but laugh. "Yes, the baby must have heard you." Bailey Han gently stroked her stomach. "Baby, you have to be gigai. Don't let mommy work too hard." "Hubby, do you want the baby to be a boy or a girl?" He sat beside her and hugged her. "Both are fine. If it's a girl, I'll protect you. If it's a boy, I'll protect you with him." He kissed her cheek and added, "Also, Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao can protect the 3 of you together." She leaned comfortably in his arms. The 2 people who knew each other and loved each other, even if they leaned together quietly, without saying or doing anything, time passed so quickly. Before they knew it, An hour had passed. Xiaodong pushed his arm and said gently, "Hubby, it's time for you to work. I'll go back first." He kissed her lips like a shameless child and sighed unhappily. "I really don't want you to leave." She smiled. "That doesn't sound like something you would say." "Okay, Gigai, be good. I'll cook something good for you when we get home tonight." She kissed his cheek. The smile on his face gradually faded and he said in a deep voice, "Honey, I have to go to the hospital after work." Xiaodong asked worriedly, "Is Su Yunqian's condition not too good?" He nodded. "She committed suicide this morning. Fortunately, I found out early." She didn't know how to comfort him. She hugged his waist and said gently, "Go ahead. Drive carefully. I'll wait for you to come back." He hugged her tightly gratefully. Beauty novel, Songshu 566. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.